You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Let's call this meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, June 6, 2024. I have 7:01 or 7:02 p.m. I'll introduce members of our commission and staff to begin with. Commission member Joe Chadwick.
Recording in progress.
Joe Chadwick, commission member, are you here?
Joe Chadwick is present.
Fred Russo, commission
Fred
member.
Russo is present.
Joe Vayuso, commission member, are you here?
Joe Vayuso here.
Commission member Marcy Pelusi, are you here?
Marcy's here.
Commission member Massimo Liguri. Massimo, are you here?
Massimo Liguri is here.
And commission member Sharon Hutner. Sharon, are you here?
Sharon Hutner is here.
Our staff this evening is our town planner, Harry Smith. Harry, are you here?
I'm here.
Our assistant planner, Evan Brining. Evan, are you here?
Here.
And Michelle, our clerk recording secretary, lurking in the background is Michelle Martin. And I am Chuck Anders, chair. And at this point, I'll ask our secretary, Fred Russo, to read the notice of public hearing.
Legal notice, Town of Branford. The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of public hearings to be held on Thursday, June 6, 2024 at 7 p.m. by remote technology. Consider the applications listed below. Information regarding how to participate in the public hearings will be provided on the Commission's meeting agenda that will be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. Application number 24-4.9, Special Exception for Grading, Section 6.8, located at 33 Flax Mill Road, 3133 Flax Mill Road, LLC, care of Kevin O'Neill, applicant and owner. Application 24-4.10, site plan for off-street parking facility located at 33 Flax Mill Road, 3133 Flax Mill Road, LLC, care of Kevin O'Neill, applicant and owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies are on file in the Planning and Zoning Commission's office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street, Branford, Connecticut, 06405. Written communications may be sent to the above address or to Planning and Zoning at branford-ct.gov. Branford Planning and Zoning Commission, C. Andres, chairperson.
Chuck Anders, chair. Thank you, Fred. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings, which is the applicant goes first, make its presentation, any consultants, screen share if needed to show plans, we review that. After the applicant's presentation, we typically turn it over to the staff in the commission, hear a summary of a staff report, and open it up for questions and comments by commissions. At that point, we open it up for public participation. We ask that you state your name and address for public, state your name and address before speaking. I'm going to ask Evan to review with everyone the process for participating. Once you're recognized and state your name and address, you can make your comments. And then when we're done with the public portion, we allow the applicant to respond to any of the public portions. There may be additional questions or comments from commission members and staff, and we may or may not close the public hearing. It's certainly not unusual to continue a public hearing for more than one session. So with that, I'm going to ask Evan Brining, our assistant planner, to review with everyone the process for participating in the public hearing process remotely.
Sure. When instructed, if you have a computer with a microphone, there is a raise hand button down at the bottom of your screen. You can also type into the chat that you would like to speak, or just wave your hand in front of your camera and I'll try to catch you. If you're dialing in by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And we ask that everyone please state their name at the beginning of their comment or question.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Evan. And with that, we'll follow our agenda. And the first item on our agenda is a continued public hearing. That's Nuzzo Properties LLC. Attorney James Perito is representing the applicant. That was a zoning regulation text amendment to remove a certain section 7.19B6 to delete the 20 event limit for non-agricultural farm events, accessory use in industrial zones. We opened this at our last meeting, and I think we continue this. Mr. Perito, are you ready to proceed?
James Perito for the applicant on home address 55 Averill Place in Branford, Connecticut. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you recall, when we were at the first portion of the public hearing, there was some discussion of having myself on behalf of the applicant and the town planner, Harry Smith, have a discussion about whether there'd be some kind of structure of numbers that would be workable in our particular situation. And Harry and I came up with sort of like a multi-tiered type of concept. And when I went back to the applicant on that, while portions of it would be acceptable, the reality is that it becomes sort of an accounting nightmare. You know, if we're over 100 guests, is it by one, by two? Who's counting? If we planned on a number, it gets really to be an issue. So I went back and we focused on what Mr. Smith's original concern, which was the parking use in the grassy area. Because if the larger the event, there was concern that there'd be parking in the grassy area, and too many events using the grassy area could result in either a mud field or a dust bowl. So Mr. Nuzzo went back and he had his surveyor go to the site and actually sort of restripe the parking spaces in the gravel area, which is where almost all, in fact, all our parking takes place. And it turns out that we actually have over 100 legal spaces in the gravel area. So in fact, as we said at our last hearing, we don't use the grassy area. If there was a concern that we'd have to have overflow to use that grassy area, we in fact don't need to, because I'll be happy to separately from this, show the planner that striping so that, you know, he'd be confident that we're not using the grassy area. With 100 spaces, our capacity in our facility is no more than 200. That's pretty much what you need for parking. But as we testified at the last meeting, many of our events, no matter what the size, a lot of people come in party buses, limousines, things like that, where it's not a 2 per car sort of strict counting here. So we would like to remain with the original application, which is to remove the 20 limit on that. I did go back and I sent in to Mr. Smith today 2 separate emails that had numerous PDFs on them, which had letters of support from a host of various businesses and individuals. And I'm not going to read them. Obviously, you have them in your record. I'll let you just go run through a couple of them to show the kind of support. And the reason why I'm doing that is because a few letters apparently came in from some people in North Branford that made allegations of things which are frankly just untrue. So if I can just take a quick moment, and I will refer to the letter of supports. There's a letter in there from the Van Willigen's Garden Center, Brian Van Willigen, writing in support of the application. There's a letter from Woodwinds, Tony Supa, also in support of the application, which both of those entities actually have events. Clearly, Woodwinds is an event location, and Van Willigen's is a farm event site like ours in North Branford, which does not have a limitation on their number. Mr. Nardella wrote in. He's the sound, Nardella's music. He does DJs, sound technician, and he submitted information that made it very clear that we always stop at 10 o'clock and our noise is always within the noise ordinance limits. Most importantly, there's a letter from the Branford Department of Public Service, which indicates there has been no records of any complaints for our location in Branford. And similar letter from the North Branford Police Department that said their records systems has no noise complaints, and in fact, if they had them, they would have sent them to Branford, since it's a Branford location. There's a number of other individuals that have submitted letters that are in that first PDF. In the second PDF, again, there are 2 letters of support, as well as the third and the fourth. So I just wanted to point that out. In my email to Mr. Smith this afternoon, some of the allegations from the folks in North Branford were saying things like there's a shooting range, there's fireworks. I want to make it very clear. We do not have a shooting range on this site. We're not quite sure what people are referring to. Maybe they hear hunters in surrounding areas, but we don't have a shooting range. The farm did not have fireworks this past Memorial Day weekend and does not have fireworks. We have animals. We have ponies and donkeys. It scares them. We're not going to have fireworks there. I can reiterate, there was no noise complaints to either police department in Branford, North Branford. All of our events are held inside of our barn. They're not outside. So maybe there was some confusion there about, people being on grassy areas. The events are inside at the barn. As I'm indicated, all our events stop at 10 p.m. for the zoning approval, and they comply with the noise ordinances. The Nuzzo Farm is an asset to our community, supports local businesses, and expands the farm operations in these past 4 years. And it donates the farm for charitable events. So while the issue before you is really not our specific special permit to operate non-farm events at the farm, we are exemplary and we only serve the community. So we would ask that the original application, which we asked for the removal of the 20 limit for non-farm events, continue. And that you take it as that was presented. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Perito. At this point, maybe I'll turn it over to our planner, Harry Smith. Harry, if you have any comments, and we'll open it up for questions and comments from commission members after we hear from staff.
Okay. Harry Smith, town planner. It is true that one of the concerns I had was the grass parking areas that were part of the number that was included as how to calculate sort of in a special exception approval for their use, the maximum number that could be at any one event. I understand there are many events being held that are less than that number. I'm happy to look at a plan that shows that there could be 100 gravel parking spaces that meet the requirements and regulations. It does sort of beg the question
Can
you hear me?
Harry, you froze for a second.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I guess what I was saying is that if you approve this application with no modifications, there's no requirement that the applicant come back in for the special exception plan to have it looked at to basically replace the parking layout with the revised layout that was just described that shows 100 spaces in the gravel. I mean, if that was the case, that concern and the grass parking was not needed, that would eliminate that concern, of course. But there are other concerns with the way this was set up as an accessory use to the farm. So how do you have some kind of box within which activity is clearly accessory? Is that a number, a bigger number? Is it just a number? There's 20 out there now as events. And I think, I remember, Mr. Chair, the comment you made at the last session of the public hearing was that that could be a much larger number and in your mind still pass the litmus test for an accessory use. So that would be my suggestion as a way to proceed, is come up with a number that does work for the applicant that might be a lot larger than 20, that would not create ambiguity, and we could just, eliminate the limit, if you will, on events other than the cap that would be created by the number of parking available on site. So as part of the approval back a few years ago, it was a limit created by the number of expected that, let's say there's 100 spaces, 100 cars, then there's 200 people as the event attendance maximum. So that's pretty much all I've got. At the moment, I did go into more detail last meeting about the number of spaces and so forth, but maybe that's all a moot point. There were, just to reiterate, even though this is really covered by the noise ordinance, there was a comment by the South Central Regional Planning Council, Commission. They had to statutorily review the application because it's a zoning regulation change that said proposal may generate negative intermunicipal impacts to the towns. And I believe, Mr. Chairman, you said that with concerns of the meeting you heard were noise, since you're a member of that. So, but again, that's not something that's directly regulated by the zoning regulations. It's by the noise ordinance. And again, as Attorney Perito said, neither police department, North Branford or Branford, has received any complaints. So, and I did corroborate the Branford because I asked the question earlier than Mr. Perito did and received the same answer from Branford. So, and I believe those comments from the police departments are in writing, correct, Mr. Perito? Yeah. So I'll stop there for now and continue on.
Great. Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Harry. At this point, let's open up for questions, comments from commission members. Commission members have any comments?
Chuck,
Yes, Fred.
I was muted. I just have one quick question, and it's I don't know if there's an answer to it. My question would be: I have no objection with the Nizzles want to do with the farm. I'm glad they're doing it. Actually, just sort of a technical question though. What would happen? Because Harry mentions that this is accessory use. What potentially could happen if the accessory use exceeds the primary use? If it becomes more of a venue, I mean, that's where the money's being generated, and it's much less a farm. And so I'm just curious, and I don't have an answer to it. Maybe you may have it, or Harry does. But is that if that's possible? I think it probably is possible. At some point in time, the venue will grow. Especially if there's no restrictions on it, it'll be able to do more business. Good for them. But what happens if and when that venue grows beyond accessory use and now becomes its primary use? Is it still a farm, or does the farm become the accessory use? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just curious. Just put out there for comment.
I'll jump in if you want me to. I would imagine, and maybe Attorney Prio can elaborate a little bit, that the property is considered to be a farm. I think it had a special tax designation, which of course has nothing to do with zoning, but I think the property owner may want to retain that. So that might, I don't know that process, what they consider down at the assessor's office to allow that to be maintained. I mean, the Planning and Zoning Commission, we could, in conjunction with staff and the applicant, could always come up with some kind of use category if it didn't fall into something that would support a pure event venue. If they wanted to retain the farm as an accessory use, something could be, but it would have to entail modifying the regulation that's currently in existence even further to accommodate that, I think.
Sure.
Harry, I appreciate your comment. And I know, in this particular case, it's not like we have 20 farms in Branford. There's probably only one that's doing this. So it's a very, very sort of limited situation. But I don't know. That was just my thought. As I said, I have no bad feelings toward the Nuzzles doing what they're doing. I'm glad that they're doing it. I think it brings people into Branford one way or another. I was happy to hear that there's no complaints with either Branford or the North Branford Police Department. So that's all good stuff. I just, on that technical side, was concerned about what would happen if it became more of a venue than a farm. But I don't know. Maybe we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Well, I think it's a very good question, though, and I did contact a gentleman named Will O'Mara, I believe is his name, who works with farms and across the state, and got some communication back with him that there are a lot of somewhat similar situations in different communities where farms are, as an ancillary use, hosting events, weddings, what have you, in different ways with different amounts of infrastructure and so forth. And, given some time, I could delve into some of that, or other staff here could, or of course, the applicant and anyone, they can hire. And we can look at some kind of different regulation to provide for that. But right now we've got what we've got. And it seems like I think they just really want to move ahead with the ability to do a lot more events is what I get out of it. So hopefully there's a way to address any concerns and go ahead with that.
Chuck Anderson.
Can I say something?
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Joe Vayuso.
Joe.
To Fred's question in regards to, can you hear me? Because I'm on speaker.
Yes, Joe, we can hear you.
In regards to the farm status, they have to maintain a certain level of farm activities and whatever, so they can to fall under the tax relief exemptions and possibly the exemptions, reliefs, and everything to state make sure that they're considered a farm. And they got to have certain amount of. There's a lot of regulation in regards to making sure you stay under a farm status, or you lose some of that tax relief in many ways. Some of it's sales tax, some of it's property tax, and you get certain exemptions. First $100,000, you get an exemption on your first $100,000. But if you're not designated as a farm, you lose that. And so they have to maintain, and they have to bring in so many dollars from the farm as well, not just non-farm events. They have to prove that they're maintaining a farm status. So I think it would be to their disadvantage if they put too much effort into this farm thing, farm events, non-farm events, and try to lose their farm exemptions, because that's going to probably end up costing them more money in the long run if they lose that. And I think there's non-farm events too. I don't know if it's a fad. I don't know if it's whatever, and it's seasonal. I don't think, how much do you do in the middle of the winter at a farm when it's mostly outside with animals and everything? I think you're talking a seasonal situation, not like woodwinds where it doesn't matter what time of year it is. It's a different facility altogether. Very similar to O&Ego, right? Mm-hmm. O&Ego has many events during the summer, but they don't have those kind of events in the winter or in off season. So, and it probably, in my opinion, it probably apply the same way in this situation. So I think it's more of a seasonal situation than a year-round thing like woodwinds might be. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Joe. And I see Mr. Prudo has his hand raised. I'm sure he wants to respond. And I'll just, along the same lines that when I look at this, it has accessory use. I mean, that's how it's drafted. And it says this is an accessory use. And it's not like you could draft it differently and say it just could be allowed as a principal use, and maybe it's good. So that was sort of my thinking that why don't you just raise the number to something that could satisfy them, but still arguably accessory, and that would help. But I don't know. I hear the other arguments that it's seasonal and so forth. So, Mr. Perito, do you want to respond to these series of comments?
I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, Jim Perito, for the record. I just wanted to follow up with Commissioner Vayuso. I think he's correct on that, and I think what Mr. Russo was questioning, in order to maintain your tax exempt and your tax relief that you get under the property tax, especially, you have to maintain your level of farming, and you have to, in fact, show that to the assessor and to the state. Otherwise, you lose all those benefits. So that's the primary gauge of whether it's a farm. But in this particular case with Nussler's farm, I mean, they started as a Christmas tree farm, and over time, part of the event activity has spurred other farming. So they have trees, they have arborvitaes, they have beehives. They're putting in lavender. So it's like, as I said in the first hearing, these other means of bringing capital to the farm has actually helped more farming to occur, as opposed to getting rid of the farm and just having events, in which case they'd be an event thing. I think, and Mr. Chair, you mentioned something at the last meeting where, if you had, a total of, 70, 80 events, no matter what they are, 70, 80 events out of 365, you're still spending the vast majority of your days farming. Here, in fact, whether there's an event or not going on, they're still farming. They're still tending to the crops that they're growing. They're still tending to the trees that they're growing, which are year round. They have the animals, which is year round. So, farming is sort of going hand in hand with all this, and that's part of the allure for people. And one of the letters of support that I sent over to here this afternoon was from a gentleman in town who said, there's lots of places that don't cater to younger people that don't have much money, that can't afford the larger venues, the bigger places that, because they're bigger and they're year round and have full staffing all the time, have to charge more. So this gives another opportunity for people, and it's as Mr. Vuso said, it is much more seasonal. People tend not to want to have a farm related event in the off season, the winter season. Thank you. Thank you.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Are there other questions or comments from commission members before we open it up to the public?
One minor comment, Joe Chadwick. I believe I made this comment when we first started this several years ago, that the site from a zoning standpoint is industrial also. And the standard catalog of industries from the federal government lists hospitality and entertainment as an industry. I still think a lot of this should be as of right. And the hair splitting with regards to how much of a farm and farming, it's interesting, but I don't know to what end it serves. If this were a sort of real hardcore farm, we would not be worried about the grass. The grass would either be eaten or trampled or mud or something else. There would be seasonal blights of manure or odor. There'd be noise from harvesting. There'd be all kinds of stuff that would be so much less tolerable than what is going on here. And this is essentially I don't say a dude ranch, but I mean they go to a lot of effort to keep the place sparkly for the sake of entertainment. And they do manage to comply with the requirements of farming. So I do not see a point in making a numerical limitation that would drive a lot of people crazy trying to do accounting for. We did the provision initially on the basis of, well, let's see how it works, and it apparently works. So I'm sort of satisfied with the direction that it's taking and the likely vector it's going to move in going forward.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Joe. Are there other questions or comments from commission members?
Chuck, can I comment? It's Massimo Ligori.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So, listening to this 2 weeks ago and today, I think the two biggest concerns were parking. And it seems like they addressed that. And if they provide us with, the proper drawings and if that all comes into par, that's a non-issue anymore. The noise ordinance, when I did read those letters, I was like, oh man, that's a little bit of a concern. There's never been any police reports. So that's sort of off the table now. I think the amount of people, I think one of the bigger concerns, right, is like, if the amount of people that are eligible to be in the building that they have there, is the guest amount there? Is it a 200 maximum limit of people that could be inside? And I see attorney shaking his head yes. So now we don't have to worry about them being over maybe 100 car parking. And the main reason why I'm bringing this up is because, what they're trying to do is expand their business. They're trying to grow their business. I think by putting limits on the amount of, the amount of events they could have, I think is really cutting into their business. And I don't know if that's what we do or if that's what we should do. I'm saying hey, listen, you could only have 40 events, but really they could have 50 or 60 or 70. It's like, if everything is legal and everything is being done right and they're not getting complaints and they're not going past 10 o'clock with music and they're doing the right thing, why are we going to cut their business down by limiting them with the amount of events they can have? I'm not quite getting that part. Why are we cutting their business down smaller when they could expand it even more if there wasn't a certain amount? What would the difference be if they had 30, 40, 50? If the noise ordinance is fine, if the parking's fine, if the safety is good. I think if they could have 80 events a year, why restrict them to 50, or less or something like that? Not quite understanding that part. And maybe I'm missing something, but I just wanted to throw that out there because I'd hate to minimize the amount of the expansion that they could have as a business. Thank you. That's it for me.
Check answer. Thank you, Massimo. Other questions, comments from commission members? Marcy?
Hi. Nobody's mentioned the letters, but I was reading things about gun ranges, and that just doesn't even happen anymore. And one of the letters was saying something about fireworks, which I recall reading 5 years ago. So I really think that, I'm not sure where that's coming from, but it didn't seem current to me. And when I hear the letters from people in Branford, which is the constituency we represent with similar businesses, I don't really see how we can, I don't know if discriminate's the right word, but, deny the Nuzzos the same rights that Van Wilgens and Woodwinds basically has, whether it's for the farming or, they all have events. They're, I know Van Wilgens has a farm status. It seems inconsistent to me, and, I appreciate that the neighbors in North Branford are concerned, but, our first priority is taking care of Branford businesses. And, they bring money into Branford. They use Branford businesses to update their farm. And, that's, I don't know why we're emphasizing so much these letters from out of town. I mean, I do appreciate if there was a noise situation, but it just doesn't, I'm just not buying it. I'm sorry to say. So that's
check in. Thank you, Marcy. We'll open up the comments, see if the public wants to comment on it. So, but what I did have one question though, that if this amendment were adopted, either as is or as revised, would it be necessary to amend the existing special permit, or would it just proceed, or would there need to do that? And that's for Harry and maybe Mr. Perito.
I'll weigh in, Jim Perito. I would say no, because the original permit had other conditions on it that talked about, making the report, which is due right now, frankly, making the report yearly about what goes on there and, what the condition of the fields and things like that are. So I wouldn't think there'd be any change on that. If there was a new application, you could put other conditions on it, or another farm, you could put other conditions on it. I mean, you have a lot of power in the context of the existing regulation to tailor approval to the circumstances of both the site and the surrounding area and things like that. So I think the regulation really doesn't need to get to the number, because that was originally sort of aside from that. And as I think Mr. Mino said, that our building from a fire standpoint is limited. No more than 200 occupancy on that.
Thank you, Mr. Perito. Harry, do you think would the special permit need to be amended, or is it covered? I think part of it is there's a general plan. They have to do a reporting requirement. The hours of operation are part of the permit, not the regulation, right?
the hours of operation are part of the general operations plan, which I think is part of the permit itself. The other issue is, as Attorney Perito mentioned, the special exception gets into the details of it, and that's already happened. So there are details already chiseled into the use of the site, which is the parking layout. And to have an alternative layout would require some kind of modification of the plan, whether it's modifying just the site plan. We'll have to look at whatever process would need to be followed. But there's nothing requiring them to do that in the regulations if they're altered just as they've been submitted for modification. And I'm sure they would follow through, because they've said publicly they do that. I get that, but we also have to look at use of this facility potentially by entity other than the NUZZOs. I mean, you're changing the regulations for anyone who wants to do this kind of thing, even if it's only one property, could be anyone coming in the future and doing it. So you have to give, I think, some thought to that potential scenario. On the staff side, I mean, I appreciate all the discussion about the sort of natural limits, if you will, or the requirement because of considerations of maintaining tax status as a farm. That needs to be a certain level of activity related to the farm itself directly. The number is an easy way to make sure it's accessory, frankly, whether it's, whatever that number is. So that's the idea behind me sort of harping on the number, is the way it's, as you said, the way the regulations framed, it's accessory, which is subsidiary, smaller than the main use of the farm. And you can look at that any way you want. You can say, yeah, farming's happening every day and events don't happen every day. That's fine. We can't really, we certainly don't have the time to go through what the assessor's office might do when they're looking at the tax status of it every once in a while, whenever they review it for reapproval or whatever they do. So it's fine. If you want to do that, it just takes us kind of out of, frankly, the most of the business of, if you will, policing it as an accessory use, other than to make sure, we could look at the schedule submitted every year, make sure that's happening, inspection of the condition of the site, and so forth. Another reason why this was chosen, my understanding was, the desire to not have all the improvements you would need for a venue business, like woodwinds, for example. I don't know the status of Van Wilgens and whether they're classified as a farm or a nursery, according to zoning, or how that actually works. It's also been there an awfully long time. And I think they probably had events there for quite a long time. So I don't know whether it's grandfathered in any way. I just don't know the status of it. But there are a lot of different ways to look at it. And I would maybe suggest, if you do go without a number, that you have some kind of language that could potentially work out that sort of basically requires they come back in with the site plan changes that have been described in terms of identifying 100 parking spaces that have a gravel parking surface rather than the grass. So that would give me more comfort level that you have these events more frequently, that it's not going to result in any degradation of the property at all. Because that's another factor, that, the stormwater management and all kinds of things were contingent upon a certain level of usage of the site. And, with the gravel parking surface, parking, it's probably not a problem. They certainly would maintain that, being the business they're in on the side. In my understanding, it's been maintained pretty well. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Chuck and Chair, thank you, Harry. At this point, let's open up to public comments. So public may wish to be heard on this. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment? And if so, Evan, can you remind us how to participate?
Yeah, sure. So down at the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand button. Please select that if you'd like to speak. You can also type into the chat that you would like to participate, or just wave your hand in front of your camera and I'll try to catch you. I believe first up, Joanne would like to speak. Joanne, are you ready?
I am. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I don't know how you can say that the police department has no
Excuse me, Joe.
complaints.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Excuse me, Joanne. Can you identify your name and address for the record, please?
Joanne Consiglio, Crossfield Road, North Branford, right in back of the farm.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how you guys can say no one called the police departments of Branford or North Branford. I personally have called many times. So have my neighbors, Branford and North Branford. Did you read the letters and do you know how that noise disrupts our lives? It's robbing us of our freedoms to enjoy our own yards. On top of it, they cut down trees to plant their Christmas trees, and that has increased the volume of the noise because we're in a valley, and in that valley, it echoes. There are 3 blocks of families being impacted by this noise. And if they don't have a shooting range, you people better look into who's shooting all day on Sundays, and actually all day yesterday also. Something's going on up there and it's shooting. I know guns, it's shooting. So someone should check into that. Also, if they have 2 or 3 events a day, we will be virtual prisoners in our homes. We will not be allowed to be outside. Actually, I could hear it when my windows are down in my house. I can actually hear it. And we're just fed up with it. I understand they want to make money. I totally understand that. But at what expense? It's at our expense. And I really hope you read those letters. Thank you.
Chuck Anders here. Thank you, Ms. Consiglio. Other members of the public that wish to comment? Evan, do you see anyone?
Just to reiterate, the raise hand button down at the bottom of your screen, or you can type in the chat that you'd like to participate. We ask that you please state your name at the beginning of your comment or question. Looks like Perry Maresca would like to speak.
Hi, Perry Maresca, Branford Economic and Business Development Manager. Just want to say, after the hearing on May 16th, some of the comments and concerns, I decided to stop in and see for myself about this location, and if they were capable of holding many events without detrimental effect on the property, the neighbors, or the environment. I had been there often, although it was 15 to 20 years ago when we used to buy real Christmas trees. To my surprise, I mean, I got to tell you, I was amazed. The pristine sign and the old truck that announced the entrance have always been visible to all from the main road on Route 1 that the Nuzzos put. But what was really astonishing was that the loose chunks of gravel, potholes, and tire ruts had all been replaced with crushed stone from the Stony Creek Quarry. The same quarry that is owned by the town of Branford, the same quarry that receives money for every nugget that gets hauled out of there by truck. Continuing down the driveway, I couldn't help but recognize the notable difference lining each side. Instead of seeing fencing, parking lots, backs of buildings, and warehouses of the adjacent commercial buildings, you saw a steady line of arborvitaes. These emerald borders were uninterrupted with the exception of an occasional vintage farm tractor or direction sign. At the end of the main driveway, to the left, there was a stone waterfall with fish. At the opposite end, the right side, was a lawn leading to the quarters of many farm animals, ponies, donkeys, chickens, many others. I got to say, this was maybe a third or halfway into the property before you actually saw any buildings. I was even more surprised when I saw the building where we used to go and pay for our tree and any other little knick-knack Christmas decorations that they would have in there. This building was totally different. They put a lot of money into it. Looks gorgeous. And the other small buildings all complement the property. You wouldn't know that you're smack dab in the middle of a bunch of commercial buildings. This has been an existing business, a tree farm, for long before the property was zoned IG2. I'm not sure why it felt it was considered industry and not BL as the adjoining property at 758 East Main Street, and all the others all the way up to North Branford Town Line, also listed as business, but perhaps more as a farm and less of consumer-oriented establishment. Maybe that's why it got lumped into the IG2. But it's definitely not an industry as we know today, manufacturing, etc. So the Nuzzo family bought it, and they brought this to a level that's very attractive, attracting families to enjoy the beauty that is nestled within these large commercial buildings. And again, it's a place that you could bring kids, you can have an event. My presumption is less expensive than a lot of the other venues around. And again, once I got all the way down the driveway and I saw the beauty, then there's also a pond with a waterfall, man-made pond. And beyond that is just the North Branford horizon that you're seeing. You're way above all of it and above all of the trees. This property, it's located in Branford. They've got an adjoining property, which they also own in North Branford. None of the buildings are on the parcel that is in North Branford. All the buildings are in Branford. The building that is closest to any residence, Branford or North Branford, is 3 football fields away in North Branford. This distance, I'm sorry, and half of that area is blocked by a solid growth of mature trees. This distance is the same as from the center of the Branford Green to the Branford Police Station, if everybody can envision that. In that area near the green, there are hundreds of residents. Does anyone know how many music events we have in our center outside? Does bringing more than 200 people a shot Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights? Not to mention the Branford Festival that's been going on for 40 years. And speaking of the festival, when it had to be paused due to COVID concerns, Nozzo's Farm hosted an event to allow the festival to raise funds. They donated the property at no charge. They also donated the property for Cosgrove Animal Shelter and Autism Benefit and many, many, many more. In addition to that, a lot of the business that they do is with other businesses in the town of Branford. I really feel that we need to do what we can to support them. We're trying to regulate how many events they can have, but the neighboring town, the town where the only area where any objectionable letters came from, that town does not have a maximum on events for their farms. You've got, and I'm not calling people out. I'm saying this is a good thing. The brewery up on Route 22, I believe it is, that's considered a farm, and they have multiple events. Most of them are outside. They don't have any limitations to what they have. Rose Winery, Stewards of the Land is the one that I was thinking of. You mentioned Van Wilgens before. These are all properties that are considered farm and have multiple events. I just hate to hurt a business that has taken an area and improved it. Just the environmental improvements that they put in with all the trees that they've planted, the way they've cultivated the land, the additional things that they're putting in farming. Branford has always been in favor of trying to preserve farmland. This is a perfect way of how we can preserve farmland. It's not bringing a bunch of animals into the center of town on the Branford Green. It is an area that is secluded. Even as I said before, you're talking between 3 football fields and 5 football fields in the area of where there's any residents. And 5 football fields, just for the record, is from the center of the green all the way down to the community house. And there's hundreds of residents in that area as well. Whereas you're looking at the area where there's even conversation about any residents, you've got 7 homes, total of 7 homes. It's too important to not support something like this, that they've improved everything. They've brought business. They've brought tax revenue. Anything they sell, they're making, any events they have, they're paying taxes on, and they're supporting other local Branford businesses. I please talk to the commission and I'm telling you, please support them and don't limit them. They can't hold events that are more than a few hundred people. They just wouldn't want to or be able to. So thank you for the time.
Chuck Andrews Chair. Thank you, Mr. Maresca. Other members of the public wish to comment? Evan, do you see anyone?
I do not see anyone. Again, if you'd like to speak, you can type it in the chat, raise the hand button, or wave your hand in front of the camera. I'll try to find you. I do not see anyone.
Did we explain that you need to be on Zoom to actually comment that this, unless you call into the meeting with a phone or something? So I think there was some concern. I don't know whether it's people accessing it to BCTV or any other means, may not be aware there's no way to raise your hand or do anything. You can't see your name in the little boxes on the screen, then you're not on Zoom, by the way.
Also, if you're calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hand.
And the number to call in is 1-646-558-8656. Again, that's 1-646-558-8656. If you get prompted for ID number, that number is 827-742-0034, and you press pound. I'll put that up just so people can see it for a second. So you'll see this area here, dialing in by phone only. Just want to make sure that anybody wants to speak can speak.
Chuck Andrews Chair. Thank you, Harry. You can leave that up a little bit, and Evan, if you see anyone or anyone tries to call in, please let us know. In the meantime, maybe we could ask Mr. Perito, do you have any responses to the public comment you'd like to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim Perito. No, I think the positive comments were all in support. I think Mr. Maresca really summed it up, what's been going on there. And I think that the idea of putting a number, which doesn't really direct to the number of people, and that's not in the purview because that's within the fire code, I think really makes no sense to have a number there. I think it's shown that these are responsible business owners in terms of it being accessory or not. It is clearly accessory up to this point. Maybe that changes in the future, and then we deal with it on another level. The farming advantages really dictate from the tax standpoint, and that's going to be one factor. I think that's helpful. Like anything in enforcing regulations, the zoning enforcement officer has to go and look at details. It's no different than anything else. And this is not an instance where there should be a regulatory number when there's no other numbers in accessory uses throughout the town where they say, oh, you can't do more than X or Y, because then it's not accessory. It's always a judgment call. And I think there's no reason to have a number here. I think that we've answered the questions regarding alleged complaints. There simply aren't. The police came back with their letters showing there hasn't been any. So I would ask if you could, Mr. Chair, let's close the public hearing tonight. And if possible, please make a decision when you're in your deliberations. And again, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you for your time and your patience.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Perito. I just have a question, again, maybe for Mr. Perito. The main objection from the public and from the letters concern noise, in which there is a noise ordinance which is something beyond zoning. But we do have, I was trying to think, what's the source of the hours of operation? I think that, some of the letters in support say, hey, we have a hard stop at 10 o'clock. And my question is, where does that need to stop at 10 arise? Was it a condition of approval? Was it part of the plan that was submitted in the special exception? Because it's not in the regulations. Regulations don't give a specific time.
I think it was part of our operations that we did that. And there are, in fact, I think the noise ordinance allows certain noise levels to go to 11 o'clock at night, but we don't, because we stopped at 10. I also think that, some of the folks in that neighborhood, there's two other venues. I'm not pointing fingers, but there's two other venues that have events. If there's an event going on at Villeneuve or at Woodwinds, maybe the noise is coming from there. I don't know that. I mean, our activities inside. Their activity is either in a tent or inside of a building. Sound travels. It's an open area and it's down into a valley. So I don't know how people can pinpoint, what's going on there. I don't think that it's necessarily us, frankly, because we don't go that late and we comply with the noise ordinance. So, but the hour was voluntary as part of our operation that we submitted.
Oh, okay. And you're bound by it. In other words, you can't decide, I'm just going to submit a new plan and raise my own hours of operation to 11 or midnight because we got to.
I think if we did that, we'd have to modify the special exception, special permit.
Okay.
We'd have to come back in front of you, and then it'd be a hearing because it's a modification at that point of a matter. And then the issue of noise, people would talk about that, and there'd be, we'd have to show that in fact we're not violating anything. I don't think we are, but some people think there's an issue.
Other questions, comments from commission members or staff?
Harry Smith, town planner.
Just one.
I agree. I believe the hour limitation, if you can hear me, everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yes. Yeah, Harry.
Okay, great. Is in something as part of the application for the special exception approval, and that's the general operational plan. And I hesitate to contradict you, Attorney Perito, but there is some numerical limits on the keeping of animals as an accessory use in a residential zone. So it's not pervasive through all the accessory uses at all, but there is some numbers in there about the number of animals you're going to have.
Can I make a quick note?
Yeah, yes.
The Branford Gun Club over off of Red Hill Road is, I know, quite active on Sunday mornings. I don't know if that sound would reach the valley, but that's one plausible explanation for the gunfire comments.
Chair Kenny, Chair. Thank you, Marcy. Any other comments, questions, comments from anyone? And Evan, just to be clear, we've been posting this phone number for the last 5 minutes or so. Have you received any calls or requests from the public to comment? Evan and Harry. Evan, you're muted.
I've not seen anyone. Harry Smith, town planner.
And Evan, you haven't either?
No.
Okay, Harry, you can take the agenda, that thing, you can take it off the screen. So, okay, then hearing nothing else, and then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. And maybe we can talk about it. I don't know if we'll vote or not, but perhaps seeing how the agenda goes, we'll see where we are. Thank you, Mr. Perito. Okay, that brings us then to our second item, which is Sue and Stefan Lundy, applicants and owners. This is 32 Wood Road. This is a special exception in CAM for a single family residence with 100 feet of a coastal resource. Is the applicant ready to proceed on that one?
Harry, could you make Joe Wren, Denise Von Dassel, Sue Lund, and Joe or Denise, is there anyone else that you guys?
I just got the unmute. So Stefan Lund and Sue Lund.
Gotcha.
Denise Von Dossel and myself.
Gotcha. I think that should be everybody.
Okay.
That's why I was raising the hand. to be unmuted, so thank you. And also, do I have the ability to share my screen?
If Harry made you a co-host, you should.
Yeah, I made all 4 people mention co-hosts. You should be able to share your screen as you wish.
Thank you all. Put the video on. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Brent. I'm a professional engineer, owner of Indigo in Old Saybrook. We're a civil engineering firm with an office located at 40 Elm Street in Old Saybrook. I am a professional engineer. We are the ones who prepared the site plan for the Lunds. And then previous documentation that was submitted, responses to comments and so forth. Also on the call is Denise Von Dossel. She is the project architect for the home. And then Sue and Stefan Lund, who are the project applicants and current owners of the property. To get started, I know that you have a really long agenda tonight, and the first item took an hour, so I'm going to try to be as brief as I can, but at the same time as thorough as I can, so you have all the information that you need. There has been a lot of documentation back and forth, town staff comments and reviews, a third-party review by a neighbor, an engineer review, a neighbor letter, and also just today, a few hours before the meeting, we got another letter from an attorney from that same neighbor. The first 2 items have been responded to in writing. The Lunds wrote a response letter back to the neighbor's letter, and that was provided to Evan, so you should have a copy of that in your materials. My office, Indigo, provided direct written responses to the engineering comments. Those were also provided, and that should be part of your packet. So in the interest of time, I don't feel that we need to go through every one of those line by line. Many were repetitive. If you have any additional questions on those after reviewing the written ones that were provided into the record, we'd be more than happy to further discuss any of those comments. The attorney's letter received today, I did discuss with Evan this afternoon and with our team. And we could go through those one by one just because that's new and we didn't have any time to respond in writing to that to offer anything into the record. But since this is just opening this public hearing as it was continued from last month because of some last minute correspondence, I would like to start by sharing my screen with the site plan that we prepared just to give you a general overview of the site location and what's being proposed. So I have a disabled participant screen share message. So if I can be co-host, that would be awesome.
Oh, Harry, could you?
Smith, I thought I did, but let me check again.
Okay, thank you.
It's listed as Joe Ren, PE, Indigo.
Yep.
All right, Joe, I think you
Should work now, I hope.
Yes, I have it. Thank you very much. So to start, just to kind of zoom you in onto the actual location of this, this is your Town of Branford GIS map. The project location is here, highlighted in yellow at 32 Wood Road. This is Johnson's Point. Killam's Point is on this side here. Just as a point of reference, we do have Lanphier Cove Camp, Sunrise Cove Camp, all these campsites here. We do have the Hospice Center with its parking lot at this location. And then you all know Turtle Bay, which is a couple hundred of condominium units. So then once you go a little bit further south, it gets into a residential area on the point. 6 lots or so away on the eastern side from the southern end of Turtle Cove condominiums is this particular lot. The lot is a little larger than other ones in the area. As you can see, it's kind of like a double lot. Most of them are narrow and long, or narrow and deep. And this one is more square than others in the area. And the house that's being proposed to replace utilizes those dimensions. If it was long and deep, it would have to be, the house would have to be deep and narrow to fit the setbacks. In this case, we have a square lot, so we can spread out north to south, as others cannot. They have to spread out east to west. So that brings you into the property. Next, I'm going to bring up the site plan and make sure you can see the new share. Going to zoom out a little bit. All right. So the existing house on this lot is shown in pale yellow. That is up in this area here. It's an existing 5-bedroom home. It does have a full basement. And the total area volume of that house, based on the town assessor card, is about 6,100 square feet. That includes porches, the full basement portions, first floor, second floor, so forth. It was built in 1915, so the use of the property has been single family for the last 109 years, and this house has been located, as far as we know, in that same position. There used to be a septic system down in this area, which is really the only area that has much soil on the property. As you know, if you're familiar with the area, it's very ledgy. We do have a rocky shorefront to the east. Over in this area is a rocky shorefront down to the cove. And these areas here represent exposed ledge areas. So we have the shorefront, of course, and then these other areas are exposed ledge. So there's very little soil. What we did find, we did do some soil testing in this middle area here between the ledges. There's some soil depth in here, but that is it. And that is where the existing or the original septic system was, in this side where we encountered soil. Since then, at some point in the past, the septic system was abandoned in place because we did encounter pieces of it, and the site was connected to the public sewer that's in the area. You can see the sanitary line coming in. It's also connected to public water, and the gas line is connected to the house as well. The house does have gas heat and hot water. We'll get into some more specifics on the use of the house as we go through comments. But just to finish up the site plan, that's the existing conditions. The proposed house is this outline, the darker outline. The existing house shown in yellow will be completely removed. There is a patio on the east side of the house, as well as a screened-in porch shown in shaded gray here. And there is an outdoor shower with no roof, with a 6-foot-high fence at this location. And it does have, for its drain, for the shower drain with a paver floor, there is a gallery just to receive the water from the shower. The driveway is not proposed to be paved. It is a decorative loose crushed stone, just in the interest of reducing imperviousness. Most of the other driveways in the neighborhood are paved. The Lunds would like to do a permeable surface or crushed stone in this particular case. There likely will have to be a paved apron at the street to receive it, but the majority of the driveway will be a decorative crushed stone. On the east side of the house, there is some limited grading just to support the patio and the screen porch to limit the number of steps in and out of the house, but is very, very limited. If we zoom in on that area, You can see we have contours 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. This area, this contour here is 14. This next one is 15. So the existing 15 is here. The proposed 15 is here. We have about a foot of fill in this area. As we go toward the patio, we get into 2 feet with a maximum of 3 feet of fill just in this small area. Everything else blends out very quickly. We meet 19 here, 18, 17, and 16. So we tie very quickly into the existing contours. It's just a little bit of fill to do that. There was an initial comment that came through that there was some fill in the V14 zone. Even though that was insignificant and it didn't matter and it met regulations, we did pull the grading to the west. It went further to the east before. With this updated plan, we pulled the grading back and minimize it as much as possible to maintain a reasonable slope. There is no activity whatsoever other than planting in the flood zone right now. The house is above the flood zone and it is not in a FEMA flood zone at all. The other important feature of this plan is the survey shows all of the existing trees that were substantial enough to show on a survey plan. We did go out and add, I think the survey map that we had showed the sizes at breast height of the trees. We did go out and add descriptions. For example, there's a twin oak here and another oak. There's a cedar, a cherry, and so forth. They're mostly oaks down in this area. There's a black pine up here on the other side of this existing wall. So there are located by survey, there were located a total of 17 trees that were located by survey. Of those 17, 14 are to remain. 3 will be removed. And the 3 that are proposed to be removed are shown in red. The ones that will remain are shown in green on this plan. We have this tree here, which is a 24-inch oak. It is essentially growing right alongside the house. And momentarily, I will show you photos of the existing conditions and show you that literally the house has been, the roof has been modified as the tree grows to be around the trunk of that tree. So with the removal of the existing house and the proximity to the new existing house, that one is slated for removal as part of the plan. The other 2 trees that are proposed to be removed are these 2 shown in red here. There is a 24-inch oak and there is an 18-inch oak, very close to each other. So you can see those get in the way. They're very close to the house, of course. They get in the way of the shower and the gallery in that particular area. And I will show you also in photos that this tree here has a significant lean, and actually the trunk of the tree, not only its branches, but the trunk of the tree leans over this property. And it is tall enough that if it did fall, it would fall, and only could fall in one direction, and that's to the south. It would hit that, that house to the south. So even if it didn't have to be removed for the construction, it would be a good idea to remove it just so there's no issue in the future with a tree falling on a neighbor's house or property or car in the driveway, for example. So with that, in front of you, this is the updated plan. We did submit an updated plan to Evan. The plan was only updated very, very minorly. It may not even be a word, but very minor revisions were made based on some of the comments that we received from the neighbor's engineer, and then reviewing those carefully with Evan to see which ones should be incorporated or addressed on the site plan. So this is the updated plan that you should have a copy of in your package. Next, as promised, I would like to go to the existing site photos. So what we did here, we also submitted this, and you have this as part of your record. We started with the site plan, and all these symbols show you the photo numbers and the direction that they were taken in. So there are a total of 11 photos, and we start here with 1, go all the way through to 11. And just to orient you to the site, I know one commission member went to the site yesterday with Evan, so that was great. For the rest of you, if you drove by, but this will give you more detail on the site if you didn't walk all the way around the site, and show you some of the trees. So starting with photo 1, this is essentially looking from the street, from the other side of the street, easterly or northeasterly at the existing house. In the background is the neighbor's house to the north. This is the existing house. You can see some ledge outcrops in the front yard, some shrubs, and some trees near the road, and also on the south side, which is over in this location. Photo 2 is a closer up, kind of a similar angle. This is the same tree here, just looking toward the existing house. Photo 3 is looking more in a southerly or southeasterly direction. Again, you can see that same tree, and then you can see some trees along the south property line. This is that the tree growing into the house is over here, and then the black pine over by that wall is down in this location. Photo number 4, this is just looking north in the front of the property, showing some of the ledge outcroppings in the existing home. Photo 5 is similar photo, just closer in. Here's that same railing, just closer in, showing the topography, an existing tree that will remain in some of the ledge. Going up to photo 6. Photo 6 is, you can see we did some soil testing out there as a result of some of the comments provided, and just for gathering information for construction. If I zoom into this, you can see the significant leaning tree. So this tree with this curve, you can see it only has one choice. If it falls, it only has one direction it could fall in. And it is severely leaning toward and over that property line. And if it did fall, it would fall in the direction of that house. And I don't have specifics on how tall the tree is and how much it would hit the house, but it would fall in that direction and cause property damage. The other tree to be removed is this one here, very close to that one. This shrub kind of covers some of it, but that is the other 18-inch one in the background. Going down to photo 7, this, the rear side of the house, the water side, looking northerly. This beautiful tree here will remain. You can see some more ledge outcroppings over here and the rocky shorefront that we have. This here is the tree that is growing into and around the house. You can see it's right at the base. I have a closer up shot of this that I'll show you, but you can see the gutter and the roof goes around it, and it's very, very close. So with the shallow ledge adjacent to it and the removal of the existing house, and then the construction of the new house in relative close proximity, this tree will be removed as a part of the construction. This area here, we wanted to show this because in your regulations, you have vegetated buffers along coastal resource areas. And a lot of this lot has various ground cover. There are perennials, there's some creeping myrtle, things like that, something other than lawn as stated in your regulations. So this is the northeastern property corner with the tree that will be saved. This one here, that's this tree. So we're at the base of this tree in the northeast corner of the property. The property line goes up over behind the tree in this area, and you can see this whole corner has a nice vegetated area. There is a little lawn in this area that comes up to that tree, and we'll show you that on the plan momentarily, what the plan is in those areas. This just shows, this is looking south or southeast from the back of the house. This is the neighbor's property to the south. You can see there's, lawn right up to the retaining wall, lawn right up to the rocky shorefront. Not much vegetation over on that side. And then continuing northerly where the subject property is, those are the neighbor's stairs there. but you can see it's a, rocky shorefront with vertical slopes that go right down to the water with no tidal wetlands or tidal grasses or anything in that particular area. Photo 10 is taken looking kind of northeast, south of the house, looking kind of northeast. This is that black pine that will remain. This is that beautiful oak that will remain, as shown earlier. And photo 11 is up on the top. And this is a close-up of the tree growing into the house. You can see the glass of the porch. You can see the roof cut in, the gutters ending. It is literally right on the edge of the house. And then right at its base, you could see the ledge. I'm not sure how it grew that large with shallow ledge and next to the house like that, but it did. I'm not an arborist, but it does have a thinning canopy. I didn't take a picture of it, but there is a thinning canopy, and you can see some deterioration of the tree at the base. So that one has to go. It's just too close to the house. If it fell in a westerly direction, it would cut the new house in half. And it would jeopardize health and safety and property damage. So this one is one of the ones that's to be removed. So on this little inset, again, all those pictures that we just went through, and then we also show the trees in green to be removed and the 3 red ones. I mean, the 3 red ones to be removed and the other green ones to be to remain as they are. You can see there's several, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a cedar along that southern property line, plus 2 more cedars over here make 9, and just 2 to be removed. The black pine stays, that 24-inch oak stays, and then on the front, we have an 8-inch oak, 8-inch hickory, and another 21-inch oak along the front, and all those 3 are proposed to stay too. So the majority of the trees are being maintained. Next, I just want to, it probably makes most sense to go into, I know you already have this, so I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but this is Evan's second review, revised staff report. And just going down through this, you can see, everything is labeled as everything we'd already talked about, plus everything says that all the zoning regulations are satisfied. And then we received an email today. Make sure you can see these. Yep. I received an email today from the town engineer, John, just saying that he reviewed all the documentation in the file and our updated plans. And he says the applicant's engineer appears to have satisfactorily responded to all items of concern brought by the May 14th letter. I have no further comments at this time, other than the VE21 zone is in error. Letter of map revision was accepted by FEMA to raise the V elevation to 15. Now, I just want to, this doesn't have any impact on the application at all, but I just want to clarify so there's no questions on that. The A2 survey we had done showed a V21 zone in that corner, transferring to a V14 in front of our property to the east. What John says here in this letter is that there was a letter of map revision done in 2014, actually 10 years ago, to revise the VE21 zone down to a VE15 zone. So the actual current flood zone is less than the 21 zone. So what we're showing is more restrictive. But even I think I have it up here. I have to change the share. But even your town GIS shows it. This is your town GIS, and you could see that the town GIS still shows it as 21 10 years later. So the surveyor got it, checked it with FEMA maps and with town GIS maps, and without knowing or understanding that there was a letter of map revision on file and approved by FEMA, it's shown as 21. But again, it's just a point of clarification and has no impact on the application at all. With that, while I'm here, I want to show you the property record card for the property. And there was some discussion, and while I'm here, I just want to talk on this point. There was some discussion of the house being seasonal currently, going to a year-round house. It's my understanding, I know there's been some case law with other municipalities in Connecticut, shoreline towns, that zoning doesn't really have purview over a seasonal versus a year-round use of a property. It's, when I talked to Evan about this, it makes sense that you have one use code, it's single family residential, and that's what this is. We have SFR, single family residential, and it's a waterfront property. This isn't a private association. It has a private road, association road. It is not a town road. And then the assessor's card, the way they've been taxed on is that there is heat. It's tied to the gas line. Heating fuel, it says right on the card here, is gas, and the heating type is hot water. The letter that was submitted into the record by the attorney included a tax assessor card, and on there it made a random comment about seasonal. And what I think that is, and what I've seen in the past, is that at some point the house had a septic system. We found remnants of it with our soil testing on the south side of the house. And at that time, it was probably deemed seasonal because they couldn't get a code compliant septic system because most of the property is ledge. But once the house tied into the public sewer line, once it came through and they tied in, then there was no restriction for the house being seasonal. So even though it's a moot point, we feel, in our opinion, to zoning, we just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention. At some point, the assessor card probably should be modified because it is a year-round house. It has been used as a year-round house. It's 109 years old, and the property owners intend to use it as a year-round house. So with that, the last thing I want to bring up is the letter that we received today, this afternoon, from the attorney for the neighbor. And then after I run through this, Denise will talk a little bit about one of the comments in this letter. After this, I'll just have Denise just show you the home really quickly, just to orient you with the proposed house. And then if you have any questions related on any comments or responses, I think that'll just save time rather than me going through all of the 20 engineering comments that your town engineer said we have satisfactorily satisfied already. So this new letter that just came in today was dated yesterday, but it did come in this afternoon. Kind of quickly grouped together with the project architect and the owner to talk about this letter. But I think since you just received this, you probably didn't have a chance to read it. And we didn't have a chance to respond to it in writing. So I just wanted to go through the points with you. So the first one talks about the seasonal use that we already just covered. So moving on to number 2. Zoning regulations, special exception criteria. They feel that it's in their opinion that the site plan and what's being proposed is not in compliance with their zoning regulations. We are not requesting any variances. We meet all of the bulk requirements of your zoning regulations. Your zoning regulations don't really specify, limitations on the house size. The dimensions of the house, right to left, front to back. You do have coverage limitations, you have setbacks. We meet all of those with leaps and bounds. I could go back to the site plan. You can see that every single dimensional requirement we meet. We're not even really close on any. We meet all of them, and there's no special variance or special exception necessary. Evan looked at the plans twice, once the original, second the updated, and then the engineer looked at it as well. Every single thing is, every single item is satisfied, is listed as satisfied, and there's no outstanding concerns. That's what this number 2 says. It fails to comply with that particular section. We agree with town staff that it meets all sections of the zoning regulations. The house to be demolished is 30 feet long, and the proposed house is approximately 90 feet long, 3 times of the existing house. This is an interesting way, wordsmithing to make it sound 3 times bigger. Denise, this is a good segue into her input on this particular comment. She did an analysis of the existing house and the neighbors' homes in the area to demonstrate to you that this next statement on this third paragraph is false, that the proposed house is not in harmony with other houses in the neighborhood. So Denise, if you will, if you can share with them your findings on the adjacent houses.
Sure. So I looked at 8 properties on Wood Road.
Denise, name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Denise Von Dassel, KB Designs. I'm the architect on the project from Old Saybrook. So I did look at 8 properties on Wood Road, starting with number 6, which is the first one to the north as you enter the private development here. Going all the way down to the let me see, 1, 2, 3 to the south and to the west of the property as well. And out of those 8, we have the second largest lot area, ours being 0.449 acres. And the only one that was larger was 26 Wood Road at 0.69. However, I also found that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the 8 had a larger ground coverage or footprint on their property as a percentage of their lot area than what we are proposing. Also, the existing footprint or the existing house on this property, 32 Wood Road, the footprint is smaller. It's 8.2%. However, the living area in the house, because it's taller, the living area in the house, according to the town records, is 2,947 square feet. Our proposed house has a coverage or footprint coverage on the property of 11.5%. So we're going from 8.2 to 11.5. But our living area is 2,950, 3 square feet more than the existing house. The existing house's dimensions are more square. Our proposed house works. The existing house also sits on the northern within the northern setback line. Our proposed house, as Joe mentioned, is compliant with all of the zoning setbacks. Everything. The building is less than 30 feet high. It's really 2 stories. I can, when we get to it, if you want, I can share the drawings, but I think you have it. It's a traditional coastal shingle style gambrel design, and we did the gambrel to keep the height of the building lower. We also stepped a portion of the garage end of the house back a foot from the main house and lowered its roof. So yes, this house is long or wide as it looks from the street, but it's not very deep. And as Joe had mentioned earlier, a lot of the properties in this neighborhood, A, they're smaller, but B, the width of the property is narrow and they're deep. And in our situation, we have a width along the property line of 150 feet. It's pretty big. So this house sits perfectly right in the middle. We worked around the ledge outcroppings and the setbacks to get the footprint of the proposed house. We are not planning to blast. And if you look at the plan, the northern portion of the house sits where in an area where the existing house currently sits. The existing house currently has a full basement, and we plan on utilizing that for utilities. And then we're going to, as they go through, the rest of the house is probably going to have a crawl space. Our intention is not to blast. Our intention is to kind of work with the site as it is. As Joe also mentioned, we know we have some depth where the old septic system was. And we also raised the floor height of the house up a little bit so that we know that we could get a very small crawl space if needed under the house to run utilities and things. But overall, it's pretty much it's a 2-story house, gambrel. And again, out of the 8 homes that I looked at, only one of them had a smaller building area or smaller footprint than what we're proposing.
Thank you. So
Yep.
with that, very clearly, this proposed house is in harmony with the neighborhood and the surrounding property. So that speaks to that 3rd paragraph. Going to the 2nd sheet, the 1st paragraph talks about an open shower without a roof that has 6-foot-high fencing. It is partially within that side setback. When I go back to the site plan briefly, I'll show you that. We talked to Evan about that, and that does not need a variance because it is a 6-foot-high, treated as a 6-foot-high or less fence. Really all it is, it's pavers on the ground with a fenced enclosure on that side. So we believe, and Evan seemed to agree, that no variance was required and that section could be within the side yard setback. The last paragraph before section C talks about the neighbors being concerned about the existing tree canopy and its effects on natural wildlife. As I showed you, the property to the north and the property to the south, they have lawns basically right up to the edge of the rocky shorefront, which is a listed coastal resource. On ours, we have areas, and I'll show you that more momentarily, but you saw in the photos that we have quite a bit of vegetation other than lawn along that rocky shorefront, where the adjacent properties do not have that along the adjacent rocky shorefront. So we feel that even with the modifications of the plan, that it will be equal to or possibly even better with the proposed improvements that I'll show you momentarily than the existing conditions. As far as the request of any conservation restriction to protect or preserve natural, scenic, historic, unique features of the property, the house is not on any historic register as far as we know. There is no easement over the property for any sort of view, and we're not aware that the neighboring properties or any of the other properties in this area have such restrictions on their properties, as they have lawn right to the rocky shorefront. Section C, this section goes, this is the last page, by the way, of this letter, but it just goes in to say that if the Planning and Zoning Commission does decide to approve this application, they would ask you to consider the following conditions, and there are 4 conditions. The first one is no blasting. You already heard Denise say in this house, foundation will be designed around no blasting. The Lunds do not want to pay for blasting. They do not want to do the blasting on their property. There will be no blasting. There could be a small area that's hammered with an excavator that's on site anyways there. And the Lunds would have no issues with limiting any of that work on existing rock, not blasting, between 8 and 5 and weekdays only, as it says here. That is not a problem to have that condition. Number 2 talks about Wood Road and a construction sequence. Of course, the Wood Road is a one-way road, if you're all familiar. As you go down Wood Road to the south, it's a one-way road, and it loops around the western side and comes back out to the entrance. So there's always 2 ways in. Even if the road was blocked or was out of service for some reason, the loop goes all the way around, and any vehicle can access from the other side if ever needed. But of course, the vehicles will not block the road. You can't even park on part of the road without blocking it, since it's so narrow. It's probably 10 or 12 feet wide in most areas, since it's one way. And we are totally okay with the condition that the road always remain fully open and all of the construction vehicles park off the pavement of the road. That is not a problem. That will have to happen anyways, and we are okay with that condition. Number 3, this references my response and my written response to the 20 engineering comments about vegetated buffers. And I will show you, I'm going to jump back to the site plan to show you some of that on the updated plan as well. The Lunds they do plan to get a landscape architect on board through this process and have them come up with a beautiful landscape plan for the property. For the most part, what's there is going to be maintained and worked around with some adjustments that I will show you. They have committed to, since 3 trees need to be removed, they have committed to planting 3 new trees. The specific locations of those and the types of those have not yet been decided. It's too early in the process, and that will be part of the landscape plan, but that definitely can be an acceptable condition for those to be planted prior to a permanent C of O, certificate of occupancy, being issued for the home. No problem there. The last part of this condition, however, talks about no significant large 24-inch or more oak trees or maple trees be destroyed. Of the 3 trees that we showed you before, 2 of them are 24 inches as listed by the surveyor. So we have to take down those 2 trees. One of them is leaning toward the baker's home and over that property line and is in the way of the south side of the house. And the other 24-inch tree is the one we showed you that is growing into the existing house with the shallow root system, and that one also needs to be removed. So we can't accept that part of that condition number 3. But as far as planting 3 new trees in that area, we can. We cannot match the caliper of the tree because we physically can't plant a 24-inch diameter tree on site. They're just not available, and it's just not practical to plant them in this area. So standard landscaping planting trees will be planted on site, but not matching caliper, and 2 24-inch trees have to be removed from the site. So that comment number 3, the condition as modified, as I tried to best explain, would be acceptable with those modifications only. And we did provide a specific tree count and specific location for the removed trees. We don't have specific location for the replacement trees. Those could be presented to zoning staff once they have their landscaping plan. That is not a problem. We could add that into the condition. But as of right now, of course, the house is not even under construction. We don't have a landscape plan yet, but that will be part of it. Last one. This one is not acceptable to the client and should not be acceptable. They're saying that the one-way private road is subject to damage by heavy construction equipment. Denise had noted going through the files that 2 of these houses were built just 10 years ago. So obviously large equipment was used to build those houses. And we are not aware that this same condition was imposed on those particular property owners. Looking down in Johnson's Point, we see some large homes, we see pools. Of course, there has been large construction equipment on that road in the past, and there will be in the future. They are part of a homeowners association, and they pay a monthly fee. The majority of that monthly fee goes toward road maintenance. It is a private road. It is not a town of Branford road. It's not maintained by the town of Branford. So the zoning commission and the town doesn't even really have purview over that road, and they already pay into a fund for that road maintenance. So that number 4 is not acceptable. for this. They don't plan on doing any damage, but of course they don't want that condition on there. They already pay into a fund that fixes the roads. With that, I want to jump back to the site plan just quickly to show you some improvements based on comments that we received and point out a few other minor things that I didn't show you before. Number one is we already talked about blasting, so no more comments on that, but this is the area where the proposed shower is in this area. It is, again, pavers on the ground surface, permeable pavers with a 6-foot surround fence, no more than 6 feet high, and the drain goes to this 24-inch gallery over here that has a capacity of more than 500 gallons. Standard rinse-off shower like this one would probably use 20 or 30 gallons. So the gallery has much more capacity than required. That gallery is not used for stormwater. We have ledge conditions on this site. We do have some soil, depth of soil down the middle. We have about 5 feet of soil down in this area, 4 to 5 feet where the existing septic was. Over in this area, we have 2 more test holes. We got about 7.5 feet of depth there with a groundwater table at about 6 feet. So in this direction, the ledge gets shallower, and we have exposed ledge along the west side, exposed ledge along the east side. So there's really nowhere, it's kind of like a bathtub. There's really nowhere for underground, a significant volume of underground drainage infiltration to go. Plus, you could see from the pictures I showed you before, the soil on site above the ledge is a very, very fine, silty, sandy loam, and it has very low infiltration capability. So putting any of the roof runoff into there, even though it's not required by the zoning regulations in this case, is just simply not a good idea. All of the green, this green symbol that you could see, they're kind of like little grass symbols. All of that area represents ground cover. That's not lawn. So this area here, all the way around the south, under these trees you saw in the pictures is all ground cover. Up in the northeast corner, this section is all ground cover as well. There is a little patch of lawn right here that just touches the rock face. And there is another little patch of lawn here that touches the rock face. What is being proposed in the spirit of intent of meeting or exceeding conforming to your regulations, although it's not necessarily required by your regulations, since we already have areas, landscaped areas other than lawn along the rocky shorefront, the Lunds are proposing to fill in this current lawn area on the north with vegetative ground cover, maybe one of the trees in that area. They would have to have their designer figure that out. But this green shaded area is presently lawn, and it's 434 square feet. And the note says, in talking with Evan, the note says, lawn area to be vegetated with appropriate and salt-tolerant plant species consistent with DEP guidelines. So the DEP list of acceptable planted species will be in that area. Similarly, this area here, this vegetated area that's existing will be expanded. This area is about 123 square feet, same note. So those two together, 557 or so square feet of removed lawn area and added ground cover areas, landscaped areas other than lawn as written in your zoning regulations. Two last things. One is zoning compliance to show you directly, and second is stormwater. So we have very detailed coverage tables down in the bottom left corner, and we have a very detailed zoning table up here. We have a list of everything required in the zone, everything existing. As Denise said before, you could see how much of the existing house is over the north side yard setback line. Significant volume of the house, very close to the property line. We are bringing the new house into full conformance. Again, no variances required. We meet all setbacks and we meet coverage. All the way down, I don't have to go through every line. The building height, we're only at 30 feet where we get 35, so we're 5 feet under building height. Floor area, we get 40%. Currently, the house is almost 34%. We're going to about 33.2%. Like Denise said, it's approximately the same, but porches and covered porches, things count. So there's a little bit of a difference there of those numbers, but essentially we're staying more or less the same with floor area, and most importantly, below the 40% that's allowed. Lot coverage, we're able to, with over just about a half acre of land, we're able, per your regulations, cover 25% or over 5,400 square feet. For proposed conditions, we're only covering less than half of that, 2,569 square feet. So although we're increasing by 3%, we're still less than half of what we could cover and still be compliant with your regulations on here. So it's a very low coverage from what the zoning regulations allow. Hence no stormwater mitigation measures being proposed for the site. As far as low impact and trying to help runoff and reduce runoff, most of the driveways in this neighborhood are paved. I've mentioned this before, but they are proposing a decorative crushed stone driveway, not a processed stone driveway. Obviously, they don't like the look of that. It is a decorative crushed stone driveway that is loose and allows water to infiltrate into and through it. I've mentioned the ledge conditions and the soil conditions not really being suitable for any underground infiltration or even rain gardens for that matter, because rain gardens depend on good soil infiltration so that they're not a wet pond all the time. And the soil on site and the ledge conditions are just not conducive to that. So the proposal is just to, if there are gutters, and I don't think that's been decided yet, but they could either go with a situation with eaves and no gutters and just drop down to like a rounded stone perimeter and let it absorb into the upper surface of the ground. Or if there are gutters, they would have roof leaders intermittently, and those would discharge to the ground. They would disperse overland. And you could see the property is kind of surrounded by these vegetated areas. So the roof runoff would get treated overland flow before it ever could make it to the Rocky Shorefront, the coastal resource, and the Branford Harbor, of course. Last thing with stormwater is that there was some discussion of potentially pushing stormwater to the property on the south. And I could show you in the pictures as well, but on this survey, you could see it very clearly. From the street, there is a little opening down in the southwest corner where there's no work really being proposed other than a crushed stone turnaround for the driveway. The remainder from that point all the way down to this 22-inch twin tree that is staying, which covers all of the construction to the north, is a stone and mortar solid wall that is at least a couple feet high. I don't have the exact measurement, but that will prevent any surface water from going in that direction. Currently, we have these little grade to drain arrows. We don't even really have to disturb the ground because if you follow the contours, the direction of the stormwater heads toward overland through the vegetated area down to the east to this corner of the property where the Rocky Shorefront is. So any runoff migrating from north to south gets to that area and then moves to the east because it cannot go to the south and get through that wall on that particular side. So with that, we feel, and the town staff agrees, that we are consistent with your zoning regulations, conform and exceed in all aspects of your zoning regulations. So with that, we would like to see if you have any particular questions. If you would like Denise to show you the house plans, which may or may not be of interest for this particular application. And, you know, we feel that it's conforming and that it can easily be approved. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for the length, but I just wanted to give you that detail.
Chuck Indus Chair, thank you, Mr. Wren. At this point, maybe we'll turn it over to Evan to review anything you'd like in the staff report.
Sure. I think Mr. Wren touched upon most of the project and even got into some of my staff report. They meet the bulk requirements of the R4 district. However, they are proposing that shower partially into the setback. As I understand, it's going to solely consist of a fence and some pavers flush with the proposed grade. This would not require a variance, as fences under 6 feet tall can be within the setback. A finding has been added that would just confirm this. They added or they revised their site plan to show a reduction in the proposed regrading area. They indicated the location of existing vegetation that's proposed to be retained, and added 2 separate spaces labeled as existing lawn proposed to be vegetated with appropriate and salt-tolerant plant species. They did not provide a landscaping plan, but they did add that vegetated buffer to the rear of the property. They also include the location of all significant trees on the property. They propose to remove 3 of these significant trees and 4 are proposed to remain. The condition has been added specifically requiring all significant trees within 40 feet of any construction activity to have tree protection measures installed prior to the start of construction. They meet the off-street parking requirement. No lighting information was submitted, but we put a condition on that would require compliance with section 6.7 of our zoning regulations, our outdoor lighting section. They did update their site plan already. I'd requested that they lengthen the silt fencing to just encircle not encircle, but extend around the entire proposed activity area. This was already done on the revised site plan. I did want the engineer, if he could just confirm that the proposed changes or the proposed grading changes would not cause any flooding, erosion, or other damages onto the adjacent properties. I don't know if he covered that already. Sorry, Joe, if you have. The commission would need to find that the proposed erosion control measures, to the extent that they are alternative from those in the Connecticut Deep Guideline for Soil and Erosion Sediment Control, are acceptable. The applicant satisfies the criteria of the coastal site plan. Based on the application materials, it appears they satisfy the special exception criteria as well. Staff recommends the following findings. The coastal site plan is consistent with the goals and policies of the Coastal Area Management Act and incorporates conditions and modifications necessary to mitigate adverse impacts on coastal resources and any future water-dependent activities. The proposed finding number 2, the proposed outdoor shower shall solely consist of pavers or patio flush with the proposed grade and a fence under 6 feet in height within the side setback or shall be removed from the site plan. We recommended in my staff report these 3 conditions prior to the start of construction. The applicant shall install tree protection measures for all trees within 40 feet of any construction activity. 2, any erosion control measures shall be installed prior to the start of construction. And any additional measures that the zoning enforcement officer feels is necessary shall be installed. All lighting shall be compliant with section 6.7 of our zoning regulations. And prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the following shall be completed to satisfaction of the town planner. The applicant shall install a vegetated buffer in the areas marked as existing lawn to be vegetated with appropriate and salt-tolerant plant species consistent with deep guidelines. This buffer shall consist of plantings that are salt-tolerant native species. suited to the coastal resource buffer environment. I know that the neighbor had submitted some additional materials this afternoon, and they had a set of proposed conditions. Mr. Wren went over the ones he felt were appropriate or the ones that they would be okay with introducing. I would like the commission to maybe let me know their feelings on whether or not they think those conditions are appropriate. I can try to write something up either during tonight's meeting or prior to the next meeting, depending on what you guys would like to do moving forward. And that's about it. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Great. Chuck in, Chair. Thank you, Evan. Questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Hearing none, then let's go ahead and open up to the, Marcy, sorry, I didn't see you.
It's just a very picayune thing, but because the surveyors typically don't show the canopy of the tree, could they just be cognizant of the drip line on the 8-inch oak next to the stockpile? I'm just not sure if there's an overlap there or not.
Yes, and one of this is Joe Wren. One of Evan's conditions is that any tree within 40 feet of any construction, that tree protection measures are installed, and that is an acceptable condition.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, comments before we open up to the public? Hearing none, then does any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, please, again, just refresh us how the public can participate.
Sure. Down at the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand button. Please select that if you'd like to speak. You can also type into the chat that you would like to participate. And you can also just wave in front of the camera. I'll try to catch you. David Greenfeld.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I would like to say to the Lunds, I think they've gone to some expense and effort to try and comply with the issues and questions that have been raised, but they missed one. And I live at 35 Wood Road, which is directly across from their property. And I can tell you that every morning there's a crowd of people that walk and stop and enjoy the view because they have a spectacular view. And they have a double lot. And they've got a house that's 90 feet long that basically blocks 100% of that view. They didn't leave even a third of it for the rest of us. And we were all kind of a close-knit group of neighbors. And it's sort of gotten everybody upset. And 90 feet's pretty long. And you can see the original house is so when people were talking about not in harmony, it wasn't about the size and it wasn't about the shape. It was about sort of not having some concern about that. They don't have to. I know they own the property and they can build whatever they want. But basically, from our point of view, it's like they've built a great big billboard that obstructs the entire view.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfeld. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment?
Yes, Gary Tomlinson.
Hi, Gary Tomlinson, 50 Johnson's Point Road, over the crest of the hill from where the construction will be happening. I wanted to talk at some length about trees, but in fact, the trees have been very well covered by Mr. Wren. Not entirely covered, it seems to me. So I'll make two quick points about trees. Three. We on Johnson's Point, it is one of those special places along the Connecticut coast where the tree canopy goes right down to Long Island Sound, and we are very, very protective of our trees, or we try to be at any rate. So the 2 points are this. One is about the regulations. The regulations talk about retaining significant trees, quote, to the extent feasible. Of course, this is an ambiguous regulation because it doesn't say to the extent feasible before you make a plan for a house. So anybody could move onto a lot and plan building such that retaining no trees would be feasible. And we feel that a little bit more concern could have been shown for the trees before in the making of these plans. But the more important point is that the regulations are not in everything we heard from Mr. Wren being completely met. The regulation says that the caliper diameter of the trees, the significant trees removed, must be met in total by the replanting of trees. We don't expect 3 24-inch trees to be replanted, but there has to be about 5.5 feet worth of diameter of trees replanted according to these regulations, and I don't see that having been observed by Mr. Wren or any part of the plan for landscaping when it comes about. Thank you. That's all.
Chuck Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. Other questions, comments from the public? Evan, you see anyone? Looks like a few more hands are going up. Evan, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Mr. Sharon or Miss Sharon?
Miss Sharon, yes. I live at 44 Wood Road, 2 houses away from this. I've lived here for 40 years. We who live here are very privileged to live on the seashore, as we know, and we're surrounded by forest. We're surrounded by these old oak trees. 3 of these oak trees that they're suggesting they cut down survived the 1938 hurricane. They are white oaks. They have tap roots. They don't fall down on houses. I would say that in the 40 years I've lived here, I've seen 11 major construction projects happen. And that's not including just renovations. We neighbors have been lax in the past and live to regret it about the cutting down of old oaks, which is what our neighborhood is about. It's not just the seashore, it's about our forest. No project before, in my estimation, has ever cut down trees like this. And this house is an iconic summer house. 1915, I believe. The one I'm in is from 1919. These are amazing structures that are the history of Branford Harbor. This house is an iconic summer house. Some houses have been redefined down here, modified, but not torn down, not a house like this. I just want to say that because there have been houses that have been torn down because of FEMA rules. They have been redefined. They have been, because of FEMA rules, had to be set back in order to even make a change to the kitchen. One of those houses was rebuilt in the same style. One had to be torn down because it was burned down and rebuilt as it was. Others were smaller cottages or houses that needed expansion beyond their summer living conditions, because of course this was a summer community for years. The other thing I want to bring up is the length of construction. I have been here for 40 years, as I said, and we've been under construction here for many, many years of those. I understand that that has to happen, but the length of construction suggested in this project is a year. And meanwhile, construction projects of this size, which I have lived through here on this point, have been 3 to 4 years in the making. And that is, that's a huge thing for us. We live in this privileged place and we pay the taxes to live here. 2 of the projects that I'm talking about took 3 years and 4 years. And these are the same kind of size projects that we're talking about. The other thing I want to talk about is they've said that there will be no blasting, but the last time there was there have been blasting, I believe, 3 times down here. The 1918 stone house at 44 Wood Road suffered serious plaster damage last time. My house at 72 Johnson's Point Road had serious cracking in my garage cement floor. Fault lines had to be completely replaced at my own expense. We all live on one piece of big granite ledge here. I would like to suggest, if this project goes ahead, that a no blasting requirement be in writing for us all. But beyond that, I would like to say again that this amazing house, which was one of the first summer houses on Johnson's Point, it would be a tragedy to see it go. I also would like to comment a little bit further from what Mr. Wren said, which is a 90-foot long house is not in keeping with our neighborhood. It is not in harmony. And we really object to that. We object to the fact that it will take up all the views of that part of Wood Road. I think that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon. Evan, who's next?
Next up is Ben.
Hi, I think I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Ben Baker. I live at 40 Wood Road next door to the subject property. I am a retired architect that spent decades in practice on single-family houses, almost all renovations to existing houses, but a few brand new houses as well. 32 Wood Road, we call it the English House. It was the English family lived there for years. It's a classic 20th century shore cottage, as Mimi just alluded to. It's filled with beautiful, original, naturally finished woodwork and millwork. It has a spectacular fieldstone fireplace and chimney. Now, I know from decades of experience that this historic house could easily be renovated with a modern, open, airy interior with plenty of views of the water. It could even be moved. House movers have proliferated now that water is rising, sea is rising, and houses are being raised. There are many companies that could easily move this house to the center of the lot to get it, better placed. I have to say, if you look at your regulation section 9.8 point F, I believe it is, speaking paragraph 3, the design elements of the proposed development must be attractive and suitable in relation to the site characteristics and the style of other buildings in the immediate area. This house really is not. It's not a huge house by square footage, but it's a very long house. There's no other house that takes up as much street frontage as this one does. It is on a double lot. It used to be 2 lots. It was combined into one. And this house spans from one side yard setback to the other. One long continuous roof line. And it is basically just a wall. I know aesthetics are not that important to the commission, but it's a very odd looking house. It has an unusual gambrel roof, especially over its entryway, with 4 enormous columns with no particular detail to it. I must say, as an architect, there's nothing else like it anywhere on Johnson's Point in the neighborhood. You know, I hate to be put in the position of being an obstructionist, but I think given all that you've heard from our neighbors, the commission should deny this application and urge the applicants to consider a renovation rather than demolishing of a historic structure. Thank you.
Chuck Candace, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Evan, do we have additional people from the public that'd like to speak?
I do see Mr. Wren raise his hand.
Yeah, he'll have a chance to comment after all the public's done.
Just to reiterate, the raise hand button down at the bottom of your screen, you can type in the chat that you'd like to participate. I do not see anyone else.
Okay. Mr. Wren, would you like to respond to the public comments?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I have to say, you know, the area is beautiful. You know, I appreciate everyone's comments. The houses are beautiful. The trees are beautiful. The rocky shorefront. The entire area just has a great look and feel, and I appreciate everybody's desire to maintain a view. The facts of the matter, though, this house, whether it's considered to be wide or long or deep or different architecture or whatever, it meets the zoning regulations. It meets coverage. The house, a couple of folks mentioned that it was 90 feet long. Denise confirmed that the house is actually 82 feet long, and the 2 side setbacks, property is not exactly square, but on the south side, I think the closest corner is 21 feet, and on the north side, the closest corner is 25 feet. So there's 46 feet of open space across the lot, over 138 square feet. So you got about 30% or so of the width of the lot that's open for view. So yes, it's 82 feet long along that axis, but you have 46 feet of side setback total, which is about 30% of the whole area. So even though there's no view easement over this property, as far as I know, the A2 survey doesn't show any rights to any view easements or conservation areas. There is a substantial portion of the property. This is it's a wide lot. It's a double lot, as everyone keeps saying. Most of the lots are long and narrow, so the houses actually cover equal or more of the width of the property, because I'm going to share my screen and go back to the GIS, and you can see number 40, number 44, they're narrow lots, but you can see that the house takes up a good majority of the width of the lot, not leaving a lot of view along the sides of the house for other folks that walk around that neighborhood. It just so happens that number 32 is a very wide lot, 150 feet or so along the frontage. So it allows for the house to be longer in that direction. These 2 houses down here, 80 and 84, with your GIS tool, you can see that I can measure the length of the house, and that one is 109 feet long. This next one down at the point, starting here, is similar. It's actually a little bit longer, potentially. That's 111 feet long. Now, it's not parallel to the street to maximize views or because of setbacks or ledge conditions, whatever it might be, but those houses are 30 feet longer than the proposed house. So to say that this house is not in harmony size-wise, Denise went through all the square footages of houses and coverage and so forth. But from a view standpoint, you could easily see that these homes take up a considerable amount of the property. This one across the street over here, or I mean on the other side, has a double lot, and it's a fairly long house in that direction. That's 110 feet long. And this house is 82, so it's considerably less than a lot of the houses in the area, and it's the shape of the lot. So another point I wanted to make is that you may have had a question when Evan was going through his staff report. He talked about 3 trees being removed and 4 significant trees remaining. And I had said 14 remaining. The difference there is your regulations define significant trees as those with 12-inch caliper or greater. There are 8 and 12-inch trees on this property, so that's the difference in the number. All of those there are 14 of the 17 trees on the property that will remain. The ENS controls that Evan mentioned, yes, they do go around the perimeter. We do have a topsoil stockpile area that also has silt fence around it. And we have a construction entrance, which is crushed stone to minimize tracking onto the street as construction vehicles come out of there. A standard length is 25 or 30 feet for a single family home construction. And per one of the engineering comments, they asked us to make that 50 feet long, which I don't think we've ever done one on hundreds of site plans of a 50-foot construction entrance for a single family house, but we did extend it in the spirit of conforming to that comment. We already talked about the view. We talked about, or there was some mention of the existing home, and I appreciate everyone's comments on the existing home. As far as I understand, and the Lunds could probably confirm this, but the house hasn't been occupied for at least the last 10 years or so. So it's fallen into disrepair. Nick Uccello is the builder of the new home, and he is on this call. He has had infestation group for rodents and stuff in there to try to control the infestation in the house. Because of its lack of maintenance, and it's fallen into disrepair. He also, Nick, if you want to, he can comment on the duration of the project. Nick builds several coastal homes, some that make it in the Connecticut Magazine that we were involved with, and none of his projects take 3 to 4 years. So that definitely will not happen. He can't guarantee because of weather and everything else. But the standard time frame would be somewhere between 12 to 15 months maximum. And Nick is on the call, and he could kind of confirm that with you. And he wasn't on the call before, but he could also confirm that he is overseeing the construction, and that all construction vehicles will be off of the paved section of Wood Road at all times to keep that roadway open. No construction vehicle will be parked on Wood Road blocking through traffic through there. So Nick, you want to just hit those couple of points? Nick, you still there?
Yeah, I just was waiting to be unmuted.
Oh,
okay. Yes, to the points that Joe made. We do build coastal homes on a regular basis. Typical construction time frame from the moment that we start with if there is a tear down to be made, is 12 to 14 months. You know, we can't guarantee it, but our goal is always to get out of there in a year's time, get it complete. We've never had a project run at the 3 to 4 year time frame, as was suggested. Also, because of the size of the lot, we do have the luxury, I guess, that some of the other lots don't have, to really contain all of our construction equipment, activity, everything to the lot. There's plenty of space on the building lot to store materials, park trucks, park vehicles, So I also don't see that as being a significant concern.
And Nick also confirmed that you will not do any blasting earlier because of one of the attorney letters comments that came in today. We're comfortable with a condition that there will be no blasting for this project.
Yeah, it's never been our intent to do any blasting on the site because of the sensitivity of the site and the neighborhood. So, you know, that condition I think can be met. We may have to do some mechanical rock removal, whether it's jackhammering or saw cutting or something like that. But, you know, because of the grades and how the house was actually raised a little bit, and based on our test holes that we dug, it looks like that even that might be minimal.
Yes, and the other part of that condition was that any mechanical rock removal, as you said, saw cutting or hammering, would be limited to the hours of between 8 and 5 during the week, and you'd be comfortable with that too, right?
Yes, we don't have it throughout the construction. Actually, most of our contractors do not work on the weekends. We do have a few that like to work on Saturdays, but not many. And typical work hours, again, for I would say 80% of our crews is 8 to 4. We may have a small handful that like to start at 7, but most won't run after 5 or even 4 for that matter. And any of that rock excavation can certainly be kept, if needed at all, can be kept between those times.
Yes, thank you, Nick. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think we covered all the bases. If you have any additional questions for us, we'd be happy to entertain any of them.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wren. Are there further questions and comments from commission members? I see someone has raised his hand. This is a member of, is Ben a member of the public?
Yes, I believe he spoke before.
Okay, we usually don't do a back and forth, but Ben, go ahead, make it quick. What do you got?
I just wanted to ask the applicant if they could describe the type and size of machine that will remove the existing house and how the demolished material will be removed, the number, type, and size of trucks that will be required to do that. Thank you.
Can the applicant respond to that question?
That's you, Nick.
Sure. So in the past, typically we use an excavator with a thumb on it. I would say Caterpillar 300 series excavator, and the debris would be loaded into roll-off containers. The most recent one we did, I think it was four roll-offs in total, 30-yard roll-offs. This house is slightly larger, so maybe 6. Again, I can't guarantee it. You know, it's kind of just an estimate.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you. Does the applicant have any further comments?
I don't believe so. Stefan and Sue, anything to add? Denise, anybody before? Stefan and Sue, did you want to say a word or two or no?
We have nothing to add. I think that what you, Denise, and Nick said is fully supported by us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Great, thank you. Any further comments by commission members or staff? Hearing none, then I think we can close this matter as a public hearing. We may or may not be able to talk about it. I don't know if we'll vote on this tonight. I know Evan asked a question about additional conditions, so maybe we can review that issue at least. So thank you very much.
Hey, Chuck. Marcy.
Yes,
Were we
Marcy.
gonna show the architecture of the proposed house?
Excuse me, did you want to see the architecture?
Well, I'm kind of curious because we've heard comments about the historic quality of the existing house. Would be,
Yeah, they.
just trying to
I think.
understand it. I'm sorry.
Sure. I think the applicant indicated that they were available to discuss the house if you'd like. And what you want to see the new house, Marcy?
Well, I'd just like to understand what's being proposed and be able to compare to what is there in the existing neighborhood. That's all. Sorry about my dog.
Can
you see am I sharing right now?
Yes.
This is Denise Van Dassel, the architect on right now. So this is the street view of the house, or the west. Again, it's a gambrel, and then it has the garage, which is stepped back and stepped down in height. The main house is maximum from the lowest grade, not average grade, is about 30 feet, 29 and a half. That's the street side. Then that's the end of the house. So the main part of the house is 24 feet wide. There's some areas that we have here. I'll go to the plan. So the main box of the house is 24 feet wide. We jut out, 3.5 feet here, 5 feet here. The garage is set back a foot, and that's 23 feet deep. And then we have the porch. So as Joe said, most of the properties in this neighborhood are narrow and deep. And again, ours is wider towards this, as the street line. And we are working around all those ledge croppings. So the nature of this house was long to the street. But it's really in floor area, it's no bigger, it's smaller than those than 6 out of the seven. It's smaller than 7 out of the 8 neighboring properties. All the ones to the north and 3 to the south. So it's in keeping bulk wise, size wise, height wise with the neighborhood. And again, it's a traditional gambrel shingle style house. And this is the east side, or the water side.
Check in. Thank you. Did you have anything else, Ms. Van Dassel?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Van Dassel. Marcy or anyone else, you have any further questions or comments or anything else you'd like to see asked of the applicant before we close it? Hearing none, nothing else from staff?
Nope.
Okay, then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. And then again, we may or may not be able to talk a little bit about it. Don't know if we'll be voting on this tonight, though. So thank you very much. So it brings us then to item number 3 of our agenda, which is actually items number 3, 4, and 5. This is the 43 Elms LLC applicant and owner, 43 Elms Road. This is special exception modification coastal site plan, as well as a special exception for oversized accessory structure and a special exception modification for grading. And my understanding is the applicant is asking us to open and we opened the public hearing in our last meeting and continued it. And my understanding is applicant Ms. Miles, why don't you tell us what you'd like?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Megan Miles. I'm a land use attorney at Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, office at 195 Church Street in New Haven. My firm represents the applicant. And that is correct. We are respectfully requesting that you keep the hearing open and continue it until your next meeting. We prepared revised plans that incorporated comments received from Evan in his staff report, from the neighbors at our last hearing, and there were some additional comments from the town engineer that we would just like some additional time to address. And I anticipate we'll be all set for I think it's the 20th is your next hearing. So
I think so. Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Miles. So I think unless any commission member has any objections, we will continue this matter. And if you're here on this one, we're going to continue this to our next meeting, which is on June 20th. Again, another Zoom meeting starts at 7. We'll see when we get to it. So so that's what we'll do for these 3 items, 3, 4, and 5. Thank you, Ms. Miles.
Thank you.
That brings then to item number 6, which is Paula Murphy, applicant owner, 35 East Main Street. This is a special exception for an accessory apartment. And I think this is another one we're being asked to open and continue. Is that correct, Evan or Harry?
That's correct.
Is the applicant here on that one?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. So if you're here on item number 6, again, this is Paula Murphy, 35 East Main Street, special exception for accessory apartment. We're going to, I think the town engineered some comments. So we're just going to open and continue this matter to our next meeting again, which is on June 20th at our regular time, starting at 7 p.m. by Zoom. So that'll bring us into item number 7, which is items number actually 7 and 8, 3133 Flax Mill Road LLC, care of Kevin O'Neill. This is a special exception for grading 6.8, that's item 7, and then a site plan for off-street parking facility. Is the applicant ready to proceed with that one?
Good evening, Chuck and commissioners. Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering here at 420 East Main Street in Branford. I'm representing Mr. O'Neill and the property at 33 Flax Mill Road. The site has historically been used by various commercial and industrial activities. The building was built, I believe, in 78 by Bradley and Upson, and the yard held significant amounts of heavy equipment. And then I believe Smedley was using it, part of the lot at the time. And now the contract for the Branford school bus company, they would like to put their buses here, and that means the location where it is currently behind Subaru would be no longer used by the school bus activities. If I could share the screen, I'll get to the map. Let's see. I'm assuming you all could see that. So this is the property here. Try to center it a little bit. There's an existing building with the front half is a 2-story commercial building. The rest of it is high bay garage space. There is some pavement here. The rest of the property is, quite frankly, a mix of broken asphalt, millings, gravel, crushed stone, dirt. It had historically been used, as I said, right to the fence line to store heavy equipment over the years. There is a small area of wetlands just off the property over here, which I believe this is a controlled air facility, which is actually a man-made channel. This side is the Branford Steam Railroad. There's some other commercial activities over here, some car performance shop, I believe. Smedley is across the street, and then just to the north is I think they're called G&G. It's a yard for soil material they sell. So the plan is to reuse this existing building for their office space, and you know, there's large overhead doors that actually go through the building, so they'd be able to pull buses in for, you know, some minor repairs, no major mechanical repairs, but you know, if they have to fix a door or that kind of thing. We have a layout. One of the requirements from the bus company is that the surface be paved. So we have laid out a parking area that you know, handles all their anticipated bus uses. We have added landscape buffer areas all around. Behind this existing concrete wall is actually pretty tall tree canopy on this side. And then where this wetland is down here, there's some existing vegetation, but everywhere else is, again, we're joining other industrial properties, so there's very little. So we are adding some green space around the outside. We've added some landscape islands. I'll show you the landscape plan in a minute, but we have trees in those islands. We're adding a dumpster enclosure with some plantings around that as well. Designated handicap parking spaces in the front for the office uses. There is existing at-grade doors on both sides, and there's an access door in the front, which is why they have this. The building originally had the sidewalk that kind of goes across the front. In addition to that, the grading aspect of it is some minor regrading of this lot, because we're adding some drainage structures and some stormwater storage structures. So to make sure that we get it all into the system, we're basically just kind of massaging the lot somewhat to get it all to drain where we want it to. Not much, a foot here or there. So it's just, again, some minor regrading. The building has been connected to existing utilities since water, sewer, and gas since its construction. There were floor drains in the building that were not. Mr. O'Neill has already put in an oil water separator, grabbing those floor drains and connecting them to the sewer, which he had a sewer permit to do that part already. We have a lighting plan that meets all the regulations, in addition to the conduits that will be run for lighting. They will be running some extra conduits to the light locations and to the islands and outside of the pavement areas. As you may have heard, the bus company is planning on going to electric vehicles over the next few years. So we're anticipating that change and running some conduits for the charging stations that they'll need in the future. Let's go down to, this is the landscape plan. As again, we had Larry Appleton help us out with this. We're proposing some trees at the ends of the parking rows, and in the islands, we're adding. There's an existing fairly large maple in the front. We're adding a couple street trees on either side of the driveway, a couple in the yard. I know one of the comments from Evan was adding some more landscaping in the front. Obviously, because of the existing addition here, we really don't have the opportunity for building plantings, but I had suggested that we could create a landscape strip basically in front of the sidewalk. So from the street, it would look like foundation plantings and kind of create that same softening effect of the front of the building, if that's acceptable to the commission. There was a couple of comments from the town engineer, which we've already managed to go over with him. One of them was to make this parking up at this end 90 degree instead of angled parking. The water separator, which is already in. That was it. Nothing else significant. We've gotten wetland approval already because of the proximity of the wetland here. The only thing they asked is that we didn't use this area over here for snow piling. Not that we get a whole lot of snow anymore, but they asked that we, at least in this area over here, do a seed mix that gets only mowed a couple times a year, so it gets more of a kind of a natural state on this end. But quite frankly, there's going to be a decent grass shelf in front of the existing retaining wall that'll have quite a bit of capacity to pile snow, and then that will drain into our system instead of off-site. So basically, we're reusing the existing industrial site, lowering by the regulations, lowering the impervious surface ratio, and we're providing a new home for the bus company that will be serving the Branford schools. And I think it's a relatively simple project, and I will entertain any questions at this point.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Preddy. this point, maybe we'll ask Evan to review the staff report. Evan, you want to do that?
Sure. So this is a special exception for grading within 100 feet of a wetland and a site plan approval for the change of use to the off-street parking facility for the school buses. They meet the bulk requirements of the I-2 district. They provided a landscaping plan. The front yard landscaping plan or front yard landscaping requirements were not met by the submitted plans, but I added a condition asking for some additional planting up there. I understand that there is some utility lines running through the front yard space that may be pretty shallow, but I think some additional plantings outside of those areas would be appropriate. The planting bed requirement for 25% around the perimeter of the building, that requirement has also not been met. However, I think Mr. Prady did discuss that, the garage bay doors cover a significant portion of the outside of the building. So this requirement can't be met without making some significant changes to the structure. The rest of the landscaping requirements have been met, as well as the lighting requirements. They did add erosion control measures to their site plan. They received approval from the Inland Wetland Commission on May 9th, and based on the application materials presented, it appears they satisfy the special exception criteria. Staff recommends the following findings: that the commission finds that the proposed use of the property, actually, this is not a special exception use approval, so this is not an appropriate finding. So please ignore my first finding. My second finding, or first finding now, is that the commission finds that the applicant has demonstrated excellence in landscape design per section 6.3L2, as well as the following conditions. Prior to start of construction, the following shall be completed: the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. Erosion control measures shall be installed. Any additional measures that they deem necessary. Second condition is prior to the start or prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall revise their proposed plantings shown on sheet LA1 entitled Proposed Landscaping Plan to show additional plantings in the front yard area. I had circulated this staff report, and that condition included asking the applicant to change the proposed gradings. That was a mistake, so I changed that to plantings. That's a theme for this staff report, I guess. And final condition is any proposed lighting shall be consistent with the requirements of section 6.7.
Chair, thank you, Evan. Questions or comments from commission members or staff before we open up to the public? Hearing none, then let's open up to the public. Any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, you see anybody?
No, just one more time. If you'd like to participate, the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. You can type in the chat that you'd like to participate. I do not see anyone.
Okay. Okay, then any, Mr. Preddy, any additional comments?
The only thing I'll add is that, for what it's worth, all the notifications we had to send to adjoiners were all commercial properties. So I don't believe any residences will be directly affected.
Chuck Industry, thank you, Mr. Preddy. Any further questions or comments from commission members or staff?
Nope.
Hearing none, excuse me?
No, sorry.
Okay. Hearing none, then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. And again, this may be something we can take up in a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Preddy.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us then to minutes. The May 16th minutes were sent out. Does someone want to make I don't know if you've had a chance to review them, but if you have, does someone make a motion with respect to those minutes, possibly approving them as drafted?
Chadwick makes that motion.
Judge Chadwick makes a motion to approve the minutes of the May 16th, 2024 meeting. Is there a second?
Fred Russo seconds.
Second by Fred. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuzo?
Do I vote? I wasn't there last meeting.
Oh, at the minutes, you can abstain if you want. Okay. And Marcy,
Marcy's in favor.
and the chair's in favor. I suppose we have an alternate vote too, if we want.
4-0 is fine. You
Yeah, great. Okay, so minutes are adopted. And I will ask any correspondence, Harry?
Harrison Town Planner, no correspondence this week.
Great. Okay, so why don't we go back? I don't know if we'll vote, but we'll maybe discuss a couple of the public hearing items. I think one of them we can vote, which is the one we just heard. But the first one was Nuzzo Properties. This again was the text change to delete the section of the regulation that has the 20 event limit, and the proposal just to delete that. That's the proposal. And we heard the various issues and concerns. There's concern about possibly, do we want to substitute any higher number or just take the number out altogether? And we heard the concerns about the accessory nature of that and whether that would trigger, additional parking if we removed it, which may trigger a revision of the site plan if that happened. And then there were neighbors' concerns about noise from the existing operations, and suggestion that would increase it. And we heard a lot of a number of both letters and comments in favor, and some of the information about, there's no gun range, and there's, a lot of people have no problem with what's existing right now. So I guess those, I'm just sort of trying to summarize what I heard. So why don't we go around and just get a conversation, a sense of where this is going. Joe Chadwick, you're also at the top of my list. I don't know if you object to going first, but
no, I'll take whatever has come my way. I was pretty clear in the beginning that I'm in favor of this. I think staff has enough substantive work without having to account for all of the actions on a site like this, which has otherwise been a successful, compliant, and commendable use. I think the lack of corroboration of an awful lot of the negative comments I've heard makes me, I'm not dismissive, but I don't find them persuasive. All in all, I think this is the applicant's attitude and the request is correct, and I will be endorsing it.
Great. Chuck Candace there. Thank you, Joe. Fred Russo, thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I initially said I would support it, and I still do, by the way. I think what made me feel even stronger about supporting is what Joe said, Bayuzo, that there, my concern was, you claim you have a farm because you have a cow or a chicken, but I think Joe made it clear there's a lot of other rules and regulations and that, that govern being a farm. So it's just not like you have a piece of land that looks like a farm. You've got to justify that it works like a farm. So I don't, on that basis alone, whatever little doubt I may have had in the back of my mind, I don't have it anymore. I think that it was said, and I think rightfully so, that other venues don't have a limit. We've never said that any other venues you can only have 20 a year or 30 a year. So if we're going to do it, and then also based on the fact that it's still going to remain a farm, and I the one thing that was in my mind is that that Attorney Perito said was that, well, they're doing all these other things. Well, a lot of these things are done at different times, so you can do two things at the same time. You can't have an event while the animals are sleeping or whatever at night. So so I don't buy that part of it. But I do. I think what Joe said made the most sense to me. That it's going to be a farm, and they have a lot to lose if they lose that status. So at that stage of the game, whatever they do, they do. You know what? I think that type of a venue is for certain kind of people, just like other types of venues are for, they satisfy other people's needs. So I don't have a problem with it at all. And I like Joe Chadwick, I would support it.
Chuck Candace chair. Thanks, Fred. Joe Vayuzo. Joe.
Yeah, I just want to go on record. I wasn't at the meeting, but I did listen to that meeting on TV. So to make sure that I was able to respond to any, not just that particular applicant, but anybody else. So I just want to be on record that I did see it on TV.
Great, thanks, Joe.
At the same time, I'm agreeing with what Fred said and what Joe said, that this is an applicant that is not just slapping something together. They're very conscious of having, like Perry said, in regards to their very nice, clean operation. And there was an issue with the grass, parking on the grass, and they had admitted that they got plenty of parking on the gravel, 100 cars, give or take, that they don't use the grass and they don't need the grass. And then the fire marshal situation of maximum of 200 people in that building, give or take. And like I said, they have a pristine place, and they're doing a real nice job. And it's a very positive operation, and I think I'm all for it.
Check in, sir. Thank you, Joe. Marcy? You're muted, Marcy.
Sorry about that. I think it's a beautiful property. I think we're lucky to have it in a farm status. We're lucky that it's being maintained in a farm status. And I think the events makes the property even more lovely, because it could be, a farm that's falls into disrepair because of lack of funding. The barns could be, if you drive to the Midwest, you see some of these old dilapidated barns because they clearly can't afford to maintain the property with just farming. I think those are clear examples, but it's also an IG2 zone with great access. And, I shudder to think what else would be proposed if they were to sell it. And how would the North Branford residents feel about that? It's like, I don't think, and I do think that Perry's comments with regard to the noise ordinance and events being held in the center by comparison to this area. If the topography causes sound to carry, it's causing it to carry not just from this property, but the surrounding ones, and it could be carrying as far as the Red Rocks Road with the gun, gun club. So I'm really in support of this, and I think that it's not unreasonable to want to have more events. I think there's a naturally occurring number of events that will fall into place, and I think it will be seasonal. And I just find it, I don't need to place more burden on the town staff to have to regulate reports every year of the number of events. We don't do it for anybody else. So I'm perfectly comfortable with, approving it.
Okay. Thanks, Marcy. My thoughts were, again, I was sort of initially thinking, sure, well, let's raise the number. Right. The options were we just take it out of the regulation, so there's no limit, no specific number, or raising the number. And my initial thinking was, let's have a number in there, because we described this as an accessory use. How the whole regulation is adopted. Not to say that it couldn't be a principal use. Maybe it should be, but this is what it is, and this is a way to ensure it's an accessory use. And there is a rationale, I think, for raising tripling the number and still saying it's accessory use. That said, I understood the counter arguments that and they were sort of twofold. One is that it has sort of inherent limitations, the seasonal use, the structures and whatever that are prevented. But by its nature, you're not going to, it's never going to be a principal. You don't think it's going to be, as long as they actually do the farming. The fact that there are restraints to make sure that they do the farming by virtue if they want to get the exemption and so forth, as Joe pointed out. And I guess another reason that was initially pointed out by Mr. Perito is that, hey, there's other regulations about this. The one in North Branford, they call it an accessory use, and they don't have a number. That's frankly Van Wilgen's. That they have a farm accessory use farm event thing, and they don't have a number. So it's not, but it's still labeled accessory. So I suppose it is doable. So I guess I'm generally okay with that. With I guess deleting the whole thing, since particularly since everyone else thinks that. But the other that, you know, and I don't poo-poo the neighbors' concerns, but I think that is an issue, that the noise issue. That's why I was kind of asking, how do we? The main way we regulate noise now is the hours of operation, and I wanted to make sure that there was some limit, right? And because you saw in the letters, it said, and they stop at 10. Well, where's the 10 come from? It's not in the regulations, and I know the regulations say you got to submit a plan, and the plan probably said it's 10, and that's what's approved. So, and I think Jim Perito said, well, you can go to 11 for weekends on under the noise ordinance or something like that, but we say 10. So any then, I just wanted to make sure we had authority to regulate that if there's some things. So anyway, that seems to be the general thoughts. Harry and Evan, do you have any additional thoughts?
Harry Smith, town planner. Not really.
Okay.
At this point, the only thing I asked a question of the commission, I did comment that it seems like they want to restripe the parking lot or not. You could include a provision. It doesn't sound like there's concern about that. I would imagine they would come in and either as a minor modification to the site plan or through something else coming to the commission. It could even do it at a staff level, get that approved. So as long as it meets all the requirements of that section 6.5, it should be no problem. I guess that's it.
Okay, great. So I guess the question is, do we vote on this tonight? Or do we need a resolution? I mean, we probably could just vote because it's pretty easy. It's deleting text.
I think it's straightforward. I don't really know. I mean,
yeah,
the commission's so unanimous about it. I can just, you're just taking the text of that section out, and I'll, for sake of, you know, preserving the numbering, everything. I don't think it's the last number in that section, but
yeah. So how do we?
Just for the for the record, let me. And I know public hearing's closed, but I think it was clear. It was section 719.
719B6.
B6. Yeah, it was said right. 719.6, but it's really 719.6. 719B6 is the last section. So you just delete that whole all the text in number 6.
Okay. Does that mean we have to renumber the other ones?
No, it's the last number in the sequence, so it's fine.
Oh, it is?
Yep. 719. Oh, I'm sorry, I flipped the page. No.
Yeah.
So why don't we just put the word reserved there? We'll just put reserved.
Okay, great. Okay. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the application to delete section 7.19B6, which currently reads no more than 20 non-agricultural farm events may be permitted in a calendar year. So that's what we're deleting. We're making a motion to approve this proposed amendment to delete that with an effective date of when, Harry?
To give us enough time to make sure we get in the paper. Let's say, usually we do by default 16 days. So let's say 20 days just to be safe, which would be, let's bear with me a second here. June 6th. So let's say 26th.
With an effective date of June 26, 2024, with the finding that the adoption of this amendment is consistent with our plan of conservation and development, and it's also in accordance with the comprehensive plan.
Fred Roos will make that motion.
Motion made by Fred. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Russo's in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair's also in favor. Okay. So that covers that one. Another one that I think I'll just bring up, I don't know if I want to vote on it, is the second one. That was the 32 Woods Road one. That was another our public hearing. Again, that was the tear down and the new dwelling on Woods Road. We that we heard the presentation on and heard the concerns of the neighbors. Again, we may not want to vote on this because we may want to add to the resolution. One of the things Evan asked, what about the conditions that were suggested in the letter in opposition? And it sounded like the applicant agreed to versions of 3 out of 4 of them. Do we want to include those as conditions? Evan was looking for guidance. So that would be one of the issues if we're inclined to approve. But why don't, again, we go around and get general thoughts. Are we inclined to improve it? And what about the conditions mentioned? So start again, Joe.
I would actually, as much as I like to do things and just get them over with, I think we probably need to step back, get the conditions right, and make sure things are addressed correctly.
I agree. I don't anticipate voting tonight, but I want to give Evan direction to come up with a resolution to include those conditions if you're inclined to do it. And then we vote at the next meeting. I don't anticipate vote. So the 2 issues are we inclined to approve it at all or to deny it for anything raised are inclined to approve it? Do we want to include versions of those conditions or anything else that the public may have mentioned?
I feel generally favorably disposed to the application. I don't feel that the tree issue is as big of a deal as was brought up. I think it's unfortunate that the siting and the position of the house tends to be so site stingy, or so view stingy, and with regard to preferencing the owner rather than the neighborhood. But once again, there is no guarantee that anybody owns the view except the person who owns the land. So the view shed really it's unfortunate, but it's not really something we have a means of regulating. The length of the house is going to make it look bigger than a chunkier cubic house, but for whatever reason, they made the decision to make that shape ostensibly to fit within the ledge without having to blast or cut. So, I will, not having studied the plans or the topography, I'll have to agree that that's a reasonable decision. So, yes, I'm favorably disposed towards it. I think those few things are unfortunate, but it's, that's the way it is.
Thanks, Joe. Fred?
I actually have mixed feelings on this one. I like the residents that live in the area are passionate about saving old property. I did a bunch of it in my heyday, and I always felt that was always better, and often it was cost you more to restore something than to rip it down and start from scratch. We've done enough of those applications. Remember when we did right on Main Street, where it was a doctor's medical facility, where they took an old house and had it renovated, and it's just a lot of work. But I can appreciate that the people having their passion. One thing I would just, if there's anybody listening to this, and this is just something they might want to consider to clear their own minds, whether or not the house has any real historical significance. They said it was built 115 years ago. That would fall under kind of some of the rules of being a historic structure. I know even on our street, we had a house that was in question. It's got to be at least 75 years old, which this well qualifies. And I guess the Historical Society came in, they did an appraisal and said, no, it really has it's old, but it has no real historical significance. And the house came down. So I would just, as a suggestion, for those who are passionate about wanting to see that house remain, then they should pursue that avenue just to make sure in their own heart of hearts that it has as much historical significance as they believe it does. But on the other hand, if someone owns a piece of land and they meet all the regulations. Whether the house is it's not 37 feet, it's 30 feet. You know, it's 88 feet, not 92 feet. And you know, I think all of us are always reluctant when there's change, especially if it comes so close to us. We all know living in Branford that comes rapidly, especially when you're along the shore. We've all seen houses that were cottages that turned into mansions. And I'm not, proposing that should happen here, but I'm just saying that I don't see a lot that was done with the proposal that just was a red flag. So I'm kind of inclined to say to the opponents of this project is that go out and check with the Historical Society, see whether or not there's any legitimacy of how old the building is and the claims that you make against it. But I think for our purposes, if an applicant comes before us and they meet all the regulations, I don't think we have a right to say no. So I think I would be inclined at this moment to probably agree with the applicant and say yes to it.
And also include the conditions that they were agreeable to?
Yes, absolutely. I think, and I don't think they're concessions on our part. I think they're reasonable. And the applicant said they're willing to do it too. I don't know what the fourth one was right off the top of my head, but it just seems that I don't think we're going to be able to make everybody happy. But I thought the presentation was, although he said it was going to be shorter than the last one, it turned out to be a little bit longer. But I think he covered all of the misconceptions, with the road being blocked and there's going to be blasting. All those were, I thought, handled tactfully. So I agree with the conditions. I don't see anything wrong with those. I think that to some degree it gives the residents in the neighborhood a small victory, maybe not the one they wanted, but I would never want them to walk away saying, we didn't listen to what they had to say. I think it's our job is to listen to all sides of it, but we also have to do what the law says or the regulations say. And I think that, from what I could see, at least in this presentation, that they met all the regulations. So that's my inclination is to say that I would be in favor of it.
Great. Thanks, Fred. Joe Vayuzo?
Yeah, well, I'm sort of leaning towards in favor of the applicant as well. And, there was a couple of historical situations when, I forget the fellow's name, about the stone fireplace and a couple things like that. But that the house has been in disarray decaying for a long time, and you got those trees that are so close, and they're huge trees, and those trees are so close to the house. I don't know if you can take those trees down in the right way without damaging the house to the point where it has to come down. But what struck me real quick is as far as the view with the long house, the longer house and whatever. That house there now is the way I see it is on one side of the property, and it's a double lot house. And what's to prevent them to put another house on the other side of the property would pretty much equal the view that they're saying that they may lose. So that's a scenario that could happen there, and splitting the lot and put two homes there instead of one. So, but the applicant was very thorough. I mean, it took an hour and a half, but we heard it all, and I thought he was very thorough and very considerate about doing the best they can with the property. And those three trees, they got to go. They're so big and they're right near the house. They're just in the way, and they can easily replant some decent trees somewhere else, and maybe putting up more than maybe doing 5 or 6 trees like one of the residents said. Increase the caliper a little bit. That would be a little bit of a compromise, but it's a nice piece of property, and I think they have the right to develop it the way they like, as long as all the regulations are met. Like Fred said, that's it. They got the right to do it. That's my take.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Marcy?
Oh boy. I'm normally very much in favor of a lot of these things. And I have to say, the neighbors' arguments were very compelling to me for a number of reasons. As they were going through the tree discussions, the house could be made shorter to save those trees. And then when the neighbors started mentioning the significance of the historical quality of the house in the neighborhood, and the trim inside and the fireplace. And, I just was like, well, where was the consideration in the application to, we didn't save the house, or we took the architecture in this direction because of this or that. It's just, sometimes it's really easy to use the regulations say, okay, it's a pre-existing non-conforming, well, it's a conforming use, but it's a pre-existing pre-zoning lot. And so therefore the house doesn't fit on the side yard setback. So we're going to, design a whole new house. And not that they said that, but, I just found myself saying, does, gaining at 20 feet in setback, even though the neighbor's house is close to this one, worth the loss of the historic fabric of the neighborhood? And, I find it interesting yet again that the landscape architect is being brought in after the fact, isn't involved in the site planning, isn't involved in the siting of the house, isn't working with the architect in conjunction with the design of the whole environment or the neighborhood. And this is what happens. It's like, it's a perfectly lovely shingle style house. It's perfectly appropriate for many areas. The floor plan flows very well. You can see that they can age into the house. That's why it's organized the way that it is. It's organized to maximize views. I appreciate that that they have the right to maximize the views on their property. It's a double lot, but it wouldn't be subdividable as a double lot. It hadn't been built on as a double lot because of the restrictions of the ledge and the necessary costs. And it's great that they're not going to disturb the ledge and they're going to do crawl space. But, when the neighbors started to suggest an adaptive reuse, or relocating the house out of the moving the house to raise it and doing doing a smaller addition, I think there are other solutions as well. I don't know that we have the right to dictate that. And that's where I'm really struggling from an architectural standpoint. I fully get that the numbers are consistent with the zone and all of that. And legally we may be required to approve this, but I just, when you think about creating place and existing neighborhoods and the history of Branford, it's like, I just wish I knew why they chose not to look into that route, and I don't know if it's our place to dictate that they look into that route. And I'm a bit sad if I do have to approve it, because I think that I just don't know enough about the existing house. That wasn't really part of the presentation. So that's my frustration. So, as far as the tree growing into the house, of course you have to take that down. As far as the other two trees, they're okay trees. The value in those trees is the fact that they're oaks. Harry, we sat in this meeting with the landscape regs, and I got all kinds of new horticultural information on the importance of oaks, as in particular for health and safety, and for and we're talking a lot about the specific varieties of trees that need to be focused on being saved, and these are those. And this is an area where it's going to be difficult to reestablish those trees for many, many years. And, so I just am really, I'm probably going to be outnumbered, but, if people were on the fence and leaning one way, they leaning to not approve it, I would side with them. So.
Thanks, Marcy. My thoughts are that the only reason this is a special exception is because it's within 100 feet of a coastal resource, because they're doing some grading within 100 feet of a coastal resource. And that is why we do that. Typically, we don't regulate for single family houses in a single family neighborhood. We don't regulate the architecture, the size, the tear down. That's usually the property owner. It's usually the special exceptions are typically the commercial developments or multifamilies. But for single families, we just don't. It's typically you comply with the regs. You don't even have to come before the commission. And the only reason this is here is because it's not because of the nature or character of the dwelling or how it looks or what it's replacing, but because it is happens to be within 100 feet of a coastal resource, and that's 6.8 uses the word special exception. The argument, if you wanted to deny it, would be, well, let's look at the general special exception criteria, because the excavation is a special exception, and you look at section 9 point whatever it is, and it says, well, you look at the design and so forth, and then you sort of get in there. That's a road I don't want to go down, frankly. I probably disagree with it anyway. I think the house was a compatible house with the neighborhood. It was a 2-story. It looked like a nice house. The main issue, it seemed to be, there were 2 main issues from the neighbors. One is that the view is, there's the great view, and that's not, the existing house doesn't take up a whole lot, and the new one would. And the second one is possibly removal of some of the trees. And one of them said that it is a problem that if you're removing a significant tree, the regs require you to replace it. And I don't think that's a proper reading of the regs either. I think that's why we're revising the regs, maybe. But the regs say that if it's designed for preservation and you remove it, you have to replace it. But it's fudgy. It says, to the extent feasible, try to preserve them. That's what it says now. So my take is this: that yes, I'm inclined to. I understand all the issues, but from a regulatory point of view, not that I would do the same. But yes, it was. I'm inclined to approve, and yes, I'm inclined to include all those conditions as much as we can to address that particularly they agree to the neighbor's concern, so we can address some of their issues. And those were that about the no blasting, about limiting the mechanical stuff, making sure that the stuff is off the road, because that seemed to concern all construction equipment is fully off the road, and that the replacement, they said that I think that they could remove them, but the replacement of the trees, and maybe we want more than that. Maybe you want a fully, a landscape architect to submit a plan to be reviewed by staff that includes 3 replacement trees with the type and species or something to be removed, and maybe some more robust stuff on that. But that's sort of where I'm going. But I don't think we should vote tonight. We're trying to give direction to Evan to vote at the next meeting. So that's where I'm at. Other thoughts or comments by anyone? Okay, so Evan, do you have some direction?
I do. I appreciate it, guys.
Okay, so let's move on our agenda here. So next thing, sure. Yeah, go ahead, Marcy.
I just think Evan needs to make sure that it would be good if the neighbors are in agreement that they be the oaks or white oaks in particular, and replace the like we normally, like the regulation says, as if it were slated to be preserved and replaced. If they were to do that, even though we know ahead of time that they need to come down, if that makes sense. I mean, that would be, I think that would at least help at least someday recreate the forest cover, which I guess goes to your point, Chuck, about the shoreline and the upland review and protecting the shoreline. So, to me, that would be important.
I did prepare 3 conditions during the discussion. I agree. I think it would be better if we nail them down and get them right and vote on the next meeting. But in the condition that I prepared for the replacement trees, I added language that would require it to be the same species. Marcy, do you think that is the best thing to do, or is there a more appropriate species?
I don't remember whether they were red or white oaks, but I think that they need to be native species and substantially sized trees that can grow in ledge, which are most likely, if what's there is a red or a white oak, I think that would make sense.
Okay.
And so whatever the total caliper is, if they could put 4 trees to replace 20 inches of caliper or what have you, to be just generally to have that match like our current reg says, I think that that would be a concession that's consistent with why we're hearing the application as a special exception, even though it's not required in the regulations.
Gotcha. All right, I will have the conditions ready for you guys.
Great, thanks.
Chuck, am I able to comment real quick or no?
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Not on that one. We're on deliberations and you're not seated, so I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, okay, we had 3133 Flax Mill Road. That was one. Evan, you prepared that's the new bus lot for the school buses. Can you pull up your resolution?
I did, and like I talked about, I added this finding that is for special exception criteria, so I removed that. And then I did make that change in this condition for the plantings to be revised, not the grading.
Okay, and you've already reviewed it with us, so you don't have to read it again. I don't know if anyone had any comments. It seemed to be fairly uncontroversial. Industrial area, commercial area, no complaints. They're putting in the core, it's set up for electric charging and so forth. So and it had the additional landscaping for the front.
Must be on the next page. I'm guessing, is that number 4?
The
landscape?
No, that was this condition here that the applicant shall revise the proposed planting on sheet LA1 to show additional plantings in the front yard area.
Oh, sorry. It's getting late. I can't even read. Thank you.
Yes. And because it's getting late, does someone want to make a motion to approve this application by adopting the recommended finding, now just one finding, and 3 conditions as currently displayed before us in the staff report from Evan?
I'll make that motion as presented.
Motion to approve by Marcy. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All in favor? Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred.
Fred Russo's in favor.
Joe Vayuzo.
Vayuzo in favor.
And Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
And chair's also in favor. Okay, let's run through the rest of our agenda. Old business, we've got the items 1 and 2 are both scheduled for a public hearing at our next meeting. So new business, we've got 5 items. And I think these are ones where we will be scheduling public hearings probably in July, right, Harry?
Harry Smith, Town Planner, yes, except for number 3 is already scheduled for the 20th of June. That's the 22 Beechwood. It's already on the legal head.
Okay, so that's what's going on with those, and we'll conduct those as appropriate. So then bringing on to other business, we got a bond release for 211 Monowes. What's that about?
We do. Sorry, I'm losing track of my extra papers here. It's getting late for me too. Evan, do you have the extra copies I gave you handy? Maybe you can just do these. Sorry.
You got it. Which one are we starting with?
The first one is
211 Monowes.
Yes, that's a bond release.
Sure. This is a bond release. Jane Ellis, zoning enforcement officer, recommends in response to a request for return for a landscaping bond, I recommend the return of the bond in the amount of $1,800. Landscaping work has been completed.
Is there a motion to approve the release of this landscaping bond as recommended by our zoning enforcement officer?
Fred Russo makes that motion.
Motion by Fred. Is there a second?
Second by Marcy.
Second, Marcy. Further discussion. All in favor, Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred?
Fred Russo is in favor.
Joe Vayuzo?
Joe Vayuzo in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
Chair's also in favor. Item number 2 is a bond establishment for 245 East Main Street. What's that one about?
This is for a bond ensuring the survival of plant materials as part of the landscaping for 245 East Main in the amount of $2,300, 10% of the original contract for the landscape for the period of 1 year.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the establishment of this landscaping bond of $2,300 for 245 East Main as recommended by our zoning enforcement officer.
I'll make that motion as presented.
Motion to establish that bond by Marcy. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
I use no seconds.
Oh,
Bayuso.
okay. Okay, we'll give it to Joe Chadwick. I heard him first. Any further discussion? All in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
I use in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair's also in favor. Okay, item 3, planner's report. Harry?
Harrison, Town Planner, given the lateness of the hour, all I'll say is that we have now had a second meeting of the landscaping subcommittee, and if it's okay with everyone, I can give you a report along with Marcy Paluzzi and Sharon Hutner, who are all members of the committee on the meeting on the 20th.
Great.
Really,
one thing. Great. Well, I'm just going to throw that one thing I've been thinking about. I think I mentioned it to Harry. Is I would love to urge the town to enable hybrid meetings, so we could actually meet in person and have screens. I've done it in other towns. Other towns seem to be doing it. I know there's a lot of convenience, and we like Zoom, and but I think there's something to be said for having some in person. And I've been to other towns where it's worked, where you can stay home if you want, you can actually be in a spot if you want. So, but right now it doesn't look like a facility, but I'm pushing it. Insofar, not that helps, but I would love to be able to do that. So that's it for me. Anyone else got anything?
I think the hybrid's fine as long as the meeting's ended at a reasonable hour. You know, I mean, to be getting back in your car and going home at 10:30, 11 at night, I think is excessive.
Yeah, and hybrid really means hybrid. I mean, you can stay home. You don't have to. I mean, commission members can stay home. I've seen them where some commission. I've done it. The guy was in Florida chairing a meeting, so I've done that. But but it wasn't a hybrid meeting. So, okay. Anything else from anyone? Okay, someone make a motion to adjourn.
Fred Russo makes that motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Fred. Is there a second? Did someone second? Marcy seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Fred Russo?
In favor.
Joe Vayuso?
In favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair's also in favor. So, good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.